I just need to get a cab from wherever I am. And I get off the train platform and I reach my hand back through my pocket and it goes straight clean through my pocket. So they cut down. God. I was asleep and apparently they cut down the side of it, slipped the pocket out. And so like my wallet was gone, everything. Then I try to get back on the train platform and they won't let me on because I don't have a ticket.
Hey y'all, it's homecoming week for you drive-by truckers fans out there like me. We got a lot going on this week too. It's a really exciting week here. We got Wiley Gabey here. Wiley Gabey is one of the newest members to Dial Back Sound. Their single comes out this Friday, February 13th, on all streaming platforms. They're playing the Dial Back Sound showcase at Flickr before the show at the 40 Watt this Friday too. So make sure you come on by for that and check him out, man. We had the best talk. It's a long one, but there's a couple other things I want to tell you about. Sloan Brothers' new record, Love and Other Diagnosis, comes out this Friday as well. There's going to be a special talk at Cine. If you're in Athens for Drive By Truckers Homecoming, make sure you come out to that. It's going to be really cool. Glenn Rosher is heading that up. Jay is going to play some songs off of the new Sloan Brothers record, Jay Gonzalez is. It's going to be a really great time. Make sure you come check that out. Also, February 27th at the Blue Tavern, we got Danny Bedrosian, presented by this podcast, performing P-Funk songs from 1975 based on his new book, Make My Funk the P-Funk. And then on April 11th at Phipps Park in Tallahassee, there's the P-Funk Fest. I'm going to be there covering that event. We're going to do some live broadcasts from that event. Going to be interviewing all kinds of members of the Parliament Funkadelic family. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Please like this episode if you like it. Drive safe to Athens if you're heading there. And if you're not, I hope you at least have some fun doing whatever you do this weekend. Thanks for listening. And here's my interview with Wiley Gabey. We're on Overeducated and Underemployed. I'm here with Wiley Gabey. And I'm going to just start by asking you the same question I ask everybody else that's on here, and what's the first song that you remember loving as a kid?
Oh Lord, Just a Swingin' by John Anderson. I think that's Just a Swingin', but I used to sing that all the time, and my parents would have me sing it for other people.
You were very sure too, you didn't even hesitate.
Yeah, it's like for a large portion of my childhood, they would have me just sing that song, and that was a song that I sang. It was as my little 3-year-old entertaining self, but before I was aware. I guess I just really loved that song.
You don't even necessarily remember it. It's just like you've been told that.
I definitely remember singing it at times, and I remember changing the names to my quote-unquote girlfriend at the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my best friend, who was like, we were like, I guess maybe when I was 4, she was 3, Allison Dotson. Anyway, the song is, there's a little girl in our neighborhood. Her name is Charlotte Johnson. And I would sing Allison Dotson. Anyway.
I remember that song now that you're singing. I'm like, okay, I remember that song.
It's not an amazing song. I mean, it is. I love you, John Anderson. It is. But it's a very simple song. It's very simple lyrics. But that was my first cover hit.
So you were in love with music like right away then?
I think so, yeah. Dolly Parton and me singing, like apparently my mom would tell me that I would sing to myself and soothe myself with just nonsense like sounds and musical stuff when I was like in the stroller. But I don't remember a time that it wasn't like just something that I was doing or just did naturally. I feel like still even I just walk around the house singing and making sounds, which probably drives everybody I know crazy.
When did you like become aware of that? Because it sounds like it's almost innate.
It feels that way. I definitely, my parents, who've always been pretty supportive, very supportive, I think they noticed something, and so and my dad It was very much, I think that made him proud. So he'd be like, get up there and sing a song. Look what he can do, kind of thing. And so I got that praise probably, which I'm sure I did not hate. I'm sure I liked that attention. But also, it just, so I was encouraged. And we went to church regularly. So that was like, you'd see that in church. And I'd see certain ladies singing. And we had a couple of really great singers. And I remember one lady, Mina Sutton, who would sing, and I'd be like, oh, I want to do what she is doing. I'm going to do that. And
so did you start singing in the church
pretty as soon as I could? I was pretty. I think my first time on stage, like in a play and singing, was in a church musical when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I was like, "This is it for me. I'll be doing this." That was
so. Was it musicals for you at first? Was that kind of your first love of performing?
Yeah, I think I would say that my first love in that world was Dolly Parton, and I think that started like very young. So I wanted to. I'm sure that there was part of me that wanted to be her, and that was my like touchstone in a lot of ways. And so that always, whatever she was doing was like interesting to me. I wanted to. About 8 years old, I think I wanted to do it all. I would be like, I'm going to be a country music singer, and I'm going to be an actor, and I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to be these 5 other things.
You watching her movies and stuff too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The only one I don't think I could watch was The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Yeah.
But I was all of that. There was my first tape I ever got. I was like maybe fourth birthday. I was at the beach with my grandma, and she gave me this Dolly Parton Greatest Hits cassette that I've had ever since, and that was like on constant repeat. But yes, musicals, that was something that I was interested in too. But there was also the part of me that was like very much from a young age, I want to be a country music singer. I want to do what Dolly Parton's doing.
And there was something about it. It almost seemed like something about like the stardom of it all too.
Sure.
The fact that she had so many different talents and
she could do all that stuff. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. One of my favorite like little stories or I don't know facts about Dolly is that like she wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You in the afternoon. Yeah. Like that just blows my mind.
2 of the greatest songs ever written.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think I've heard you do a cover of Jolene, which
yeah, I do. I used to do it all the time. I've tried to give people a break from it, but because it's been covered by a lot of folks. But I try not to do it. I used to have a rule that I wouldn't do any set without Dolly Parton song, one Dolly Parton cover.
One in there, yeah. I always loved White Stripes. Cover
oh, so good.
That's one of my favorite just covers. Period. Yep.
He did such a good job, and everything he did with Loretta Lynn was so great. That album,
I know that Van Leer Road album is. Oh my gosh, yeah, I love that record so much. Yeah, I'm gonna listen to it on the way to Athens. That sounds like some good road music. So what are some of the early musicals that you really love? That like aside from Dolly, I love musicals too. So I'm just curious.
Mary Poppins was big for me. That's also very big into my like when my parents. I was obsessed with Mary Poppins, and also women have always been my heroes. So like Julie Andrews had that role, the whole thing. There was something magical still about her. That performance, that movie is still pretty much perfect. But I was in like the Hunting Woods with my dad and like singing like to my like doing all the accents and singing like all the parts to like It's a Jolly Holiday with Mary or something like that. And that literally, they put me in voice lessons right around that time. And my voice teacher was like, what do you want to learn? And I was like, Mary Poppins. That's it. So we got the songbook and we worked through every song in there. And I would go through like the recital time and she'd be like, what do you want to do? And I'd be like, this song. And she'd be like, and it would be like Sister Suffragette, which is the mom sings it about women's rights and how dumb men are. And she was like, I don't think you want to do that. And I was like, oh no, I do. And I was like, I did it like in full like character with the accent. Like I'm sure like people were like, what the hell is happening right now? But I was like,
and you grew up in
Wakulla County.
Yeah.
Crawfordville,
so I feel like
Florida.
that's important to bring some context into this.
Yeah, a rural community.
Can you just talk a little bit about what Wakulla is, where it is? I don't know that we've really brought it up much here before.
Let me tell you a little bit about it. It is one of the most beautiful places that I've been to. It is just south of Leon County in the panhandle of Florida. It is a coastal county, and it is rural and definitely the South. The big city for us was Tallahassee. We call it coming to town back in the day. We used to have one stoplight. Now it's grown a lot. But Wakulla is a Native American word, and I forget which for one of the translations is mysterious waters, which I've always liked. But also, as a gay kid growing up in the South, it was not always easy. It is conservative. It is a place that I ran like hell from, and only probably just now have in the last 10 years come to terms with like how much I do love it and how much it's home and how beautiful it is. But for me, it didn't always feel like the most welcoming place. Once people started to notice that I was a little different, and way before I noticed that I was a little different, I just thought that I was just doing my thing. But yeah, it was a place I didn't want to stay for a long part of my life. And
Well,
now,
just to give some context, I mean, it does have the nickname "Will Kill Ya County."
Yeah,
So
proudly.
I mean, exactly.
There are bumper stickers and hats that people wear. It's Wakulla, and then there's like this brand they had. I don't know who made it up, but it was "Will Kill Ya" all in one word that they used to wear, like a similar hat we see today. But
Probably
like,
some carpetbagger up in New
Yeah.
Jersey, just like
some smart person.
made up a web store and
Yeah, but you feel like there's some truth to that. You
yeah,
know?
yeah, no, yeah. I think as someone who grew up in Tallahassee and had all these little rural communities surrounding us, Bluntstown, Hosford, like
We
I
used to
mean,
hunt
not
there.
just Wakulla, but like on the other side of the river kind of
Yeah.
thing. I think there was a lot of that kind of out Highway 20. Those kids
Sure.
are so it's just I get it. Like
Yeah.
it was like everybody there, like toughness kind of wins.
Oh yeah, toughness.
Like,
That was always.
that's
I was
kinda the-
just laughing about that because my dad used to. I'd come home and somebody would pick on me. My last name is Gaby, and I probably the most flamboyant when I was a kid because I didn't know anything I was doing was wrong, in quotes. And but my dad would always be like, "Toughen up." Toughen up was always the thing, and also I feel like that's how it's any kind of sign of sensitivity or emotion or anything that probably feels feminine, like a feminine trait, that's anathema, right?
I can relate to that, especially as someone who grew up just like loving to be a performance kind of
Sure.
person, and I loved musicals, and my dad was a cop, and
Sure.
and yeah, so it was like this very much this kind of don't, and I'm not even trying to get into the specificities of my father, but just like having a cop as a father was like, oh, don't, you want to blend in, don't do anything to stand out.
Sure.
Don't dress
Yeah.
this way or people are going to think you're this kind of way.
Sure.
And it made me just super aware of things that I shouldn't have even been aware of.
100%. And in their attempt to give us survival tools, sometimes they diminish us a lot. I think it's aware. I don't think there's a lot of bad intention behind a lot of it, but like some of the tools, you're like,
That might be where our fathers differ, but we could just leave it at that.
we're gonna save that one for father therapy session.
I tell a joke that like having a cop for a dad does give me like imposter syndrome as a leftist because I'm not sure if I hate cops or if I've just got daddy issues. That's a real. I'm like, shit. How much do I really want to fight the power, and how much do I really just want to stick it to him?
That I'm sure that resonates for a lot of people, a lot of us, for sure. Love you, Dad.
So, what are some of the bands you start listening to growing up in Wakulla County, and how do you think like growing up somewhere like that affected It sounds like you were listening to a lot of country music
Yes.
at a young age, and
That
like
was-
top 40 country
That was
too,
it.
not just like some older stuff, obviously like Dolly, but like John Anderson is very much like that 90s
Oh yeah.
top 40.
It was very much country music. It was for like that was like saturated in country music, church music, and the occasional. So my older sister is 5 years older than me, and she is the coolest, and she was the coolest, and she was when we were growing up, and so she would be the only person who would really bring in non-country music into the fold. She was the one who got me, we would get the good pop music, whatever was Madonna, from Madonna to Wham to Alanis Morissette, whatever, Whitney Houston, all the stuff that was non-country came from her.
Mm-hmm.
We got all of our credibility from my older sister. And my mom definitely brought in a lot of like 50s, 60s, and Motown stuff that she really loved. But the primary stuff, like listening to the radio, was always like probably 94.9 still. Back when it was the Judds and Reba McEntire and Tanya Tucker, and still George Jones getting played on the radio, and a little bit of Dolly Parton towards the end of her airplay.
Dina Carter.
Yeah, but that was actually a little bit later for me.
Yeah.
But that song, Strawberry Wine, is such a great song.
Yeah. It's one of my karaoke go-tos.
Yeah. It's just a perfect song.
It really is.
For some reason, I hated it growing up, but because I think it was constantly playing. But then recently, like in the last few years, I was listening to the song and I was like, that is a goddamn perfect song.
Yeah.
It's so well written.
Yeah, I think I have very similar feelings about that song. Like for a long time, I really like dismissed it or was sick of it or whatever. And then, the last 5-10 years, I think I heard somebody just pull it out one night and I was like, damn.
It's a good one. It's a good one. So mostly that country was coming, and there was a tape we had that was Hot Country Request Volume 3 that was a family favorite, and it had Ricky Skaggs and Merle Haggard and people that no one knows, like Charlie McClain, and Highwayman was on there. It was all the big singles from whatever 80s year it was. And we would listen.
You got it from like Columbia House.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have my run-ins with Columbia House. I'm in big trouble with that. But yeah, until for the first, like as a kid, mostly it was the country stuff, radio country, whatever was hot at the time.
Let's talk about Columbia House. Maybe not specifically, but like that kind of like where were you getting, like when you start buying records, CDs, whatever it was, tapes maybe? Was it cassettes for you?
Yeah.
Like, where were you going to get them?
If it was a Dolly Parton tape had come out, or a CD, I could almost always convince somebody to buy it for me when I didn't have my own money when I was like real young. But I wanted to get tapes, and I had seen the Columbia House stuff, and I was telling my mom, I was like, it's 1 penny for whatever the hell it is. I don't know. It's ridiculous. All this, and she's like, it's a scam. You're going to have to pay whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. I'll buy you like one tape, something. She had said something, and I basically just filled it out and did it anyway.
Started licking the stamps.
I was like 8 or 9 years. Yes, the stamps. And so I remember very well because I thought I could intercept this stuff. I was like, my mom is so smart. And so like, you can't get anything past her anyway. And I was like 8 years old, maybe 9. And so I'd order my Columbia House stuff. And we were going to a baseball game that I did not want to play in because I did not want to play sports, but I had to. And so it was a Little League game. It was like a Saturday. And my mom stopped to get the mail, and the box of tapes was in there. And she was like, what is this? And I was just like, But anyway, she basically told me that I could only have them if I tried really hard at the baseball game, and that was the only time I ever tried hard at a baseball game.
Just that one game?
Yeah, I hated it so much. But she was like,
that's a good deal, though.
It was a totally good deal. She couldn't. It was also, what could you do at that point? I think she I did it. I probably did that twice. But there's also right before that, I was at a baseball game and I was playing as far away that as they could put me. I was on a team of really kids who all grew up to be like great high school athletes and stuff, and I was like definitely just the worst on the team, and I had no interest and I had no skill and I wanted to not be there. And so it was like we were playing and they like, this kid on the other team hits like an RBI, all the bases are loaded, he hits like a RBI, a home run type of vibe, and I am in the field with my glove under my arm. I'm making shadow puppets like in like the sun, and I could hear my dad screaming from far away, "God damn it, Wiley, pick up the goddamn ball!" As the ball is rolling at me, all their team is running in and scoring. My coaches are going crazy. My teammates are just like, "Not again." And I then take the glove under my arm, pick up the ball, and throw it like this. She was probably like anything to get him through this season, to get him through this game, to not embarrass himself for us.
Did you only play the one season?
That was the last one. That ended because I begged and begged and begged and begged. But then the last thing I'll say about baseball is that one of the coaches on the team, it's actually, I had a slight reference to this man in some of the music that I'm releasing, but we have in baseball practice, and I had been so humiliated and just, I was already like, they were calling me Wiley Gabey and all this kind of stuff, and everybody, but whatever, like I said, everybody was good. We were having a practice, and this man, I'll keep his name out of this, but he was throwing pitches and we do batting practice. And it was my turn, and I was just like, okay, I was telling myself in my head, I was like, you got to do this. Keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the ball. You can't miss this. And he throws the ball, and it like knocks into me a little bit. Like it's a grown ass, strong, muscly man, and throwing so hard and like at the kid who cannot play. And so the next time I was like, and he taunted me a little bit. And so anyway, like the next time he throws it, I'm like upset. I'm trying to focus on the ball, and he threw it right between my eyes, knocked me out. And
Jesus Christ.
And the great thing is that aside from the goose egg that I ended up having on my face, I was like that my mom just so happened, and I told her that he was an asshole, and I told them both but I got bullied a lot. So like sometimes I think you're just like, okay, he needs to like figure his way out in the situation. But she was there for it, and she just happened to get there early that day, and she saw what happened. Wow. And that was it. I never had to play another fucking game or another fucking practice, and I didn't have to go to school the next day because they probably were scared that somebody thought they abused me because my face looked so crazy. And he's dead now.
I'll drink to that.
Cheers. Yeah.
Oh, man. First of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. Thank you for telling that story here.
I'm an oversharer sometimes. Sorry, y'all.
That's what we're here for.
Well,
but were you into sports at all? Did
no.
you not? Do you enjoy watching them?
No.
It's like just not your thing. Are you competitive at all, though?
I do. Yeah, I've definitely got a competitive streak. I would get competitive when it came to like music and theater stuff. Like when I was, if you wanted to go to district and state festival. Do this.
You better give me that straight superior.
Yes, exactly, exactly. That was very competitive for me. Like all that kind of stuff, I wanted to be all involved in that. And academics, I was trying to get. I remember fighting like I was like 1,000th of a grade point from salutatory, and when this guy and I were just so neck, and I would just go to the guidance counselor at office and check. I was annoyingly competitive in stuff that I wanted to do. Or I felt like I had...
How close to being valedictorian am I?
That kind of thing. So just stuff that does not matter now, kids. But definitely like that. I definitely, when I was younger, very much.
I think that's better stuff to focus on than like being the strongest or the fastest, for one. I do think it's like better to focus on that stuff for the longevity of your life or whatever. But also like... than drugs or getting into there's a lot of things that getting competitive about theater and stuff that's a really good way to channel that energy at that age.
If you're gonna be competitive, for me, I guess it meant something to me too, and I wanted to. Maybe I wanted the wrong things maybe when I was younger and more feral, but it does make you better if you're playing sports, right? If you're like talking about mediocrity, a mediocre, I don't know, tennis player. If you play against the Williams sisters versus playing against your like other mediocre friend. You're gonna lose a lot, but you're gonna get better doing it. Like with music, it's my friend Teresa, who I'm sure we'll talk about later, is one of the best singers I've ever heard and ever sung with. And we used to be, because I've played with her, because I've been on stages with her and sung with her and had to not compete with her, but match something or feel like I got to bring something to this.
Yeah.
I am exponentially better artist because of playing with folks who are better than me.
I can relate to that as a comedian too, like, especially just like on being on a show, and everybody's on that night, like on fire, like and you might not even be working with the funniest people in the world that night, but everybody's feeling it, and the crowd is good, and you're like, all right, I gotta step up, and I can't like fuck up the energy of this room.
Right.
I gotta carry the torch to the next comedian, which like I don't feel like I've ever really been worried about personally, but it does. I think working with better people, like it elevates you. Like you look at a time period of a band like the Drive-By Truckers, like when Jason was in the band, and they're all, I think, and I think the relationship between Patterson and Mike Cooley has always been, all right, motherfucker, what you got? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that in the shows too, I feel like, in a good way, right?
In a very positive way. Hey, it's almost like they're having a conversation. Yeah. Which kind of brings me, I want to go back a little bit, or maybe not. I don't know. But at what point did you start playing instruments? Because you're performing, you're singing, you're into musicals. But when were you like, all right, I want to play an instrument? And then follow up to that, when did you start writing your own songs?
When did I start? I think I first started playing piano. I had voice lessons from a teacher in Crawfordville, a lady named Michelle Snow, and I think my parents and I were talking. I wanted to. I think that we thought we got as far as we could go in the vocal department and wanted to go, which was not true. And so I wanted to learn something, and I thought piano would be beneficial, and I was into that. And so I played piano first, and then, but also I saw people. So I was probably like 6 or 7, and then I saw people. You don't see a lot of country artists playing piano.
No, that's a good point.
And so I also at that point wanted to do it all, but I wasn't really drawn to the guitar. Piano's always felt more natural to me and more like achievable and attainable. Guitar's always still remains a little elusive to me, as anyone can tell by my performances. But I like sports almost at first with the guitar. Like I wanted the shiny thing that Dolly Parton was playing or whoever was doing it, or I wanted to have the guitar so I could also sing, but I could accompany myself singing. And I loved to sing. I wanted to sing. I considered myself a singer, and I just wanted to learn enough of the guitar so I could accompany myself. And so it took a long time with the guitar because I don't think I gave it the respect quite that it deserved and didn't realize the importance of it until probably I started playing with people who were good, and also with musicians who would tell me stuff like, hey, if you tune your guitar, it'll all sound better, and it'll make your life a little easier.
We do appreciate that in the audience, typically. Yeah, I will say that.
And I do too. But as I was blind to that. I wish that I would have taken it more seriously because it's been in my guitar and piano, both of them in my life since I was a kid. But
you probably learned a lot of like musical theory and things like that you might not have learned had you pursued guitar at a young age by pursuing piano.
Yeah, and I still prefer if I could take a piano with me everywhere, and if I could like a real piano, if I could just sit down at one everywhere I went, I would probably play a lot more things on it.
Yeah. J. Roddy Walston brought a digital piano and set it right where you're sitting right now and played in here. It was wild.
I love it. I love playing. I feel more at home there, but also I feel like still like a novice there because I don't always have access to it. Whereas the guitar has always reliable, and I've learned there's always I can always be better at the guitar, but I've come a long way in a longer time.
So how old were you when you stopped playing baseball?
I was 9 years old.
Because I feel like that probably freed up a lot of time to do other things, right?
And I was like, but I was also at that time I was also writing and directing and producing the church musical for Christmas. Like I found I was a very I had more if I could channel the ambition that I had between the ages of 8 and 16, 17. Now I feel like I really would be unstoppable because that little queen was like, I'm going to put on a play and I'm going to write my own play, and it might be nonsense and it might be terrible, but I somehow convinced like the church to let me do it and the music teacher to play the piano for it, and the kids to come to rehearsals, and we did it. And it was, there's a video somewhere and it's absolute nonsense, but I was doing that. I was taking music lessons. I was also started to sing, and like towards the end of right around that time, I would outside the church. I took myself very seriously. I had to have these tracks that you'd order, these tapes that like were instrumental tracks for songs.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then I would go to the Blue Crab Festival in Panacea or the 4th of July in Sop Choppy. And eventually, when I got a little better in my preteens, Springtime Tallahassee or something like that. But I would be like fully Garth Brooks out in my like too tight hat, and I was like this chubby little kid with wearing a Garth Brooks shirt, and I would get out there and I'd sing to the tracks and do that kind of stuff. So I was like,
what were your favorite like Garth Brooks songs to sing?
The River was one that I sang a lot.
Yeah.
And it was also tough because my voice, especially then before puberty hit, was like super high. So singing men's songs was hard to do. So I'd have to almost always, it'd have to be like a special key or somebody that sang really low that I could go octave above them.
Yeah.
Or I'd have to sing like a lady song and change the words and stuff like that. But the River, I managed to get the River. That was one of my regulars. Oh.
At what point do you start writing your own?
Oh, I'll say that the truth is, I think I tried to write something probably around 12 or 13. And all I know is that it was terrible.
Do you think that's what kind of stopped you from
pursuing this stuff,
or like writing more and more?
Oh yeah, I think for sure, especially as a young kid, the things that came easy to me were the things that I wanted to do, the things that I was good at first and good at quickly, and that also ticked all the boxes. So there were, I could do. That's why I could play piano well enough. I liked that. Music theory made sense. Academics made sense. I loved to read. I loved books and shit like that. And but so something was hard about the writing, and something was like didn't just flow naturally. And or I remember one time trying to like put music to something my friend had written when maybe I was like 13 or whatever, and it was like I'm god awful. But I wrote 2 songs. I don't really admit to this. I actually tell a lie on stage. But I wrote 2 songs when I was, I guess, 19, around that time. Freshman at FSU, sophomore at FSU, something like that. And one is this really sappy love song that I wrote to my first boyfriend. And it would be sweet if it didn't sound creepy now in its earnest sincerity. And then and it was a really scathing song that I wrote. I had just come out, and it was not a good time between me and my parents for a spell. Things are great now, but I had written this my friends call it my angry lesbian daddy song. but that was pretty much it. I felt like those songs, I didn't dabble too much with it until a few years later.
But you're performing still, and you're performing other people's songs. You're in musicals all through high school at this point.
I turned away from a lot of when I got into high school, I had a really great music teacher and a really great theater teacher, and I loved them so much. And my music teacher, choral teacher, Alicia Walker, amazing woman, she would make fun of, she was trying to get me to sing classical music and sing well and learn and sing well in the choir. and I have been so used to being like, I'm gonna get up there and belt my songs and do my thing, and she really helped me see this other side. But as I often do, especially at that point, I was like, oh, this is serious music. So I'm actually not interested in country music anymore because these people, I like just had this big backlash at like around 14 where I was like, this is terrible singing and this is blah blah blah. I just went like this total.
Well, it's not hard to do.
Yeah, sure.
I
And
mean,
I saw,
especially like top 40 country.
to be fair, it was the time when it was. To be fair, it was post Garth and Shania, which felt very exciting at the time, but the fallout from that is absolute garbage.
Which is like where I grew up, where like when I'm like 8, 9, it's still, I think I'm still getting like the good stuff.
Yeah.
And then by the time like the late 90s roll around,
late 90s were the crash.
Just it's all stuff, just pop with a Southern accent at that point, and no feeling into a lot of it. There was still some good stuff coming through here and there.
But even then, even at that point, I thought I was too good for any of it at that point. I was just like, I'm going to listen to music theater, and I'm going to listen to classical music, and I'm going to go and honestly, I feel like for like most of high school, that was my music theater queen like era, and it was like I was discovering like Patti LuPone, and I was like leaning into that very unabashedly. There was maybe an 80s soundtrack had come out, and I liked some of those bops and stuff like that or whatever, but
you're mostly just into like show tunes and classical.
I'm listening to and primarily, and a lot of people like, and not even like necessarily what some people would call the greatest stuff. I was living for Andrew Lloyd Webber and living for Phantom of the Opera and Cats and all that shit. But also,
I'm definitely a Sondheim guy.
Sondheim, I was about Into the Woods was my first big musical. I saw it at FSU when they did it, and it was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
My choral teacher in middle school I think she was just having a bad day. And it was like, y'all are gonna watch a movie today.
Did she play the Bernadette Peters PBS version?
She played the Bernadette Peters
PBS
version of Into the Woods. And god damn, like
it's a life-changing moment.
It really, I still remember sitting in that room probably because of that movie more than any other reason. I loved that movie. And I like to the point where I went to church with her, and that was how like I was also like a teacher's pet.
Same.
In middle school, and she let me borrow it. Like she would like after she showed it in the class, she was like, and my mom was involved, but it was like making sure it was okay with her and like making sure it got back to my teacher safely and everything. But
I love that.
Yeah, no, she let me borrow it, and I watched that shit I think she let me borrow it like for a summer.
Oh yeah,
or maybe a spring break or something. And I just like,
I think that was so magical to have that as a kid. The things that I did have as a kid that were so magical, just thinking about stuff like that, or unrelated, but maybe not, like Miyazaki. I wish if I had discovered Miyazaki at like 7, at least by 7 or something like that.
I saw Princess Mononoke in the theaters at 13.
Oh,
the first the first dub they ever did, like for American audiences. I just had some like cool older friends. We had Miracle 5.
Yes, Miracle 5.
And I went to see Princess, and that was another one of those like life-changing moments.
Yeah,
for me.
I can't imagine what that would have been like. 13 years old.
It fucking blew my mind.
I love that happened. I love that happened. Thank you, Miracle 5, and thank you, older friends.
Yeah,
the cool kids in Tallahassee.
Yeah, there were like, I really did have a good group of. I didn't get along or fit in with anybody in school, but like I had a good group of like friends that were older than me, and like usually like in bands or whatever.
Sure.
Like Social Burn and No Address,
yeah.
like those guys. I hung out with all those guys, and was like, they were taking me on the road. And I had Justin Long here a few weeks ago.
Oh wow! Yeah.
From No Address, and he produced a bunch of local records back in the day. But anyway, we went down so what were some of Sondheim, Weber? What were some of the other musicals that you were really?
What did I love?
And what did you consider like high art? Because you're like, I was pretentious. Give me some example.
It's weird because I'm gonna contradict myself at every turn. I'm
No, that's
sure when it
fine.
comes to
That's
this,
great.
but and it started with
In high school too.
yeah,
I mean.
right. I was an asshole. I was a sweet asshole, but we were all assholes at that age.
Oh, I just said you were in high school.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't
No.
call you an asshole.
I heard you say
Oh,
high
okay,
school. I
okay.
said I called myself an asshole fully, but thank you, and you're welcome to. But it won't hurt my feelings.
We haven't justified it yet, so
Yeah,
we'll
well,
get there.
Just wait. Jesus Christ Superstar was one of the first big ones that I loved. So, but also I remember talking to my chorus teacher about that, and she would be like, "Oh my God, the singing is so terrible," and then she had problems with whatever. But I really liked.
So your teacher was pretentious too.
She was definitely.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I'm pretentious about
sure.
music. You know?
At that time, I would say yes. She was. At first, we used to butt heads all the time, and then she broke me in a good way. But she would be just like, "You are." She'd say something about my singing in a lesson or whatever. She's always supportive of me and always lovely. She was never cruel, but she would say stuff like, "You are what you listen to. It sounds like you've been listening to a lot of." I don't know what she said, but I'm just throwing Dolly Parton out there, and I'm just like, and so I'm just like, and I think you are what you listen to. You need to listen to great singers. You need to listen to this stuff, right? You need to. But I was really into anybody who could do extraordinary things with their voices, and primarily for me, what that means is a woman doing something with her voice, and specifically. These references, if anybody's listening who's a music theater nerd, they're gonna roll their eyes or laugh. But like Sarah Brightman, who is a wacky, like a crazy soprano, who was married to Angela Wood Webber, who the role of Christine was written for her, and she's a very strange kind of creature. But she like had this coloratura like voice, and she could go up into the stratosphere. And so to me, like it was, and she had a strange like a little bit of an overbite, and her mouth like was different, and there was. I found something beautiful about her, but also she'd have like a little. It would affect the way she sang, and she has it's something unique about her voice. Patti LuPone, I thought, was like the greatest thing in the world. I was like, I'd listened to the Evita soundtrack, and I listened to primarily the original Sunset Boulevard, which a lot of people don't consider one of the greatest musicals until maybe recently because it's come back. But I, as a 15-year-old, I checked out the double CD from the Leon County Public Library because I was like, I can't go to Wakulla Public Library because they have nothing. Even though as a kid, that's like where I grew up. But like when I got older, I was like, we need to go. I can check out all these musicals, all these classical music things. And so I had found this recording of it. And that was like, I would just listen to her. Like there's this thing she belts that I would just repeat on constantly, like listening to it just because it just amazed me and I couldn't do it. And it was just every time it would just leave me with goosebumps. That kind of stuff was what I really loved. Anything that would just felt like big emotion, people like hollering in a way that also was like beautiful, that was like on pitch, or that had just amazing kind of power. Yeah.
Were you into like comedic roles at all, or
oh yeah,
like, is that something that interested you?
I took myself a little when I first started theater. Comedy was where I should have been, and all of that. And I wanted to be like, I was taking myself very seriously. I remember a couple of times I would audition for a play, and I always got a great role, and I was never shortchanged at all, if not probably the opposite. But I could tell sometimes that looking back, right, I would like audition for, we would have a night of one acts, and like this one act was the competition piece, and it was like some serious drama, and I would be like auditioning for this leading role part when I was like, honey, it was not happening. It would have been like, you would have had to been like in the dark completely on drugs to make it believable. But I would just be like, oh, why didn't I get this part? Instead of sinking my teeth into, or my drama teacher would cast me in. If it was a comedy and that was the only play available, then that was definitely, I would lean into that and have a great time. Mm-hmm. But if there was something like that I felt was like, I didn't realize that comedy is just as important and just as different skill set and requires a lot of the comedy is more intellectual in some ways. I think, not touting it as a better thing, but I feel like people have said
no,
that.
you can tout it as better. It's fine.
Yeah.
No, I'm just.
So, yeah, but I've always just felt like there are people who've said that, and I'm gonna sound dumb, but it's there's something about the timing and like the stuff that there's some mind stuff that goes involved in when you're doing a comic play or a piece of work versus
yeah. I think that the thing about that when it's done really well, is that it's not done by it's not calculated, like it's natural, like it's like the natural ability to have these things that you're talking about that maybe could be and has to be, especially like in a Broadway show or a musical or a live show that you're doing over and over in front of a live audience, has to be repeatable.
Yeah.
In this way that, you know, but I think it started like when it's done really well, like at the beginning, and you're trying to repeat the thing that was done naturally the first time. And I don't know what that calculation is. I just like, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There is something about like understanding. J. Roddy Walston was on the podcast, and he was talking about how like he can have funny banter and he can say things on stage like between songs and it'll make people laugh. But the idea to him of going on stage and like knowing what's funny and is it's like the scariest thing in the world to him, is what he said. And I think that if you're not a singer, going up and singing a song and getting the timing and the notes, and that's the scariest thing in the world. 100%. Like it's almost like the opposite of the grass is always greener. You know? It's like because there is some natural ability, I think, to comedy and to having now a lot of it might be like based in coping mechanisms and trauma, but I think there's more of an innate when it comes to like a singing voice or something like that.
Sure.
It can be trained, can be refined, but like some people just, you can't make them funny, or you can't make them sing good, but you can make somebody funny.
Yeah.
By telling them, okay, this is when you say, this is when you do. Like, if they're an actor, you can. Yeah,
usually I
don't know what goes into that. Is what I'm getting. I don't know what goes into making somebody else making a role funny, which is what I think you're kind of getting at. Because
I could never do what
I have no idea what that even means. Like I don't know how to. I'm not saying I couldn't write like a comedy scene.
Sure.
But I have no idea how to tell someone how to write a comedy scene.
100%. Same for me. And I could never do. You do comedy in stand-up form. So that is something that I feel is super elusive to me. I feel like I can make some jokes. I feel like I can. Sometimes I got some zingers, and sometimes I can be charming and this and that and the third. But to be able to do a set of that, and to do it, to execute, and to do all the things you got to do, like I could play for 3 hours and it may fuck up a lot of it. It may not sound incredible, but I can do that. And like the idea of having to get up on stage for 25, 45, hour and a half for some people and do comedy feels like the scariest thing I could imagine. Other than playing baseball.
Is it something that's appealing to you?
I like telling stories, and I love being in community and conversation with an audience, and I love that energy exchange.
Yeah.
Well, I love laughing.
The reason I ask is I think like a lot of singers and songwriters like wish a little bit that they could be stand-up comics, but I think the same is true for a lot of comedians.
Sure.
Too. This thing I've said a lot on here is pretty much all comedians are just failed rock stars. It's like we all wanted to be rock stars, and like in one way or another, we figured out that we were not cut out for it. Shall be a rock star.
I thought many times. I thought to myself about. There was a time when I wanted to do that's like comedy was. I wanted to do like sketch comedy stuff. I went to theater school at FSU, and got into that a little bit, and thought that's what I wanted. Did a little class at Second City in Chicago, and that part seemed fun and very exciting. And so
I did that as just a hobby for years and years.
It feels like a really good like thing to do as a person the stuff that they teach you at improv, it feels is.
Do you know Kim McShane?
I know this. I know.
She's a local, but she used to teach improv classes, still does from time to time, but her whole thing was like, yeah, like improv is like really just a great life skill.
Yeah. Yes, and I think about yes and all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that, like, and
because a lot of the times you don't really have a choice to the yes.
Yeah. Also, it definitely makes it more like it softens the blow when it's something that you don't want to. Yes, obviously, there are things that there. We're not talking about everything, but like, but in terms of, for the most part, it's
boundaries are important.
Yeah, boundaries are very important, and consent and all that stuff. But yes, and it feels very helpful. Like I'm just like I feel, and especially in performance, I think it translates to life, obviously, but also just it's even like when you're playing a show, and everyone tells you this. Lots of people have lots of things to tell you as you're putting yourself on stage and learning how to do it. But one good piece of advice that people give you is don't let them know that you're failing, or roll with it, or don't. It's like whatever. Maybe that's not the exact best example, but to take something that feels like a fuck up or a thing, and instead of feeling any negativity towards it or shame about it or whatever, take that and roll with it. So maybe it is acknowledging it. Maybe it's.
I think so. I'm thinking about something my chorus teacher that taught me or showed me Into the Woods taught us when we would go to these like district festivals and stuff like that. One thing she would stress, like if you make a mistake, ignore it.
Yeah.
Don't acknowledge it, because if you acknowledge it, then the judges are gonna notice.
100%.
If you act like everything was great, they might
they're at least less likely to notice it.
Yeah, like
sure.
if you notice, then if you act like you notice, then they're definitely going to 100%. Notice.
And people don't like, and people also want to see, for the most part, especially in these settings, I feel like people want to see people succeed, and regardless, no one wants to see you crash and burn. But I think that just theater was the same way. If someone drops a line, someone skips a page, whatever it is, if you've got your shit together and you've rehearsed it enough and you know the script well enough, or you're in it enough, you can get back there. And the same with a song, the same with so many things. And it's always more like my best moments, my favorite moments on stage, my favorite shows, my favorite things are when things that I have let it go or gotten up there and been like, I played a show with The Great Dying. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're like they're on the Dialback Sound.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's Oxford, Mississippi. Will Griffith. He's one of my best friends.
Okay.
Super sweet guy. And he's an awesome singer-songwriter.
Yeah. Now that you're like a bunch of strings are coming together.
Yeah. I think more are going to come between now and like next weekend. I think even more so, connecting lots of dots between that community, but sorry, I totally lost track of myself.
No, you're fine. We got all the time in the world, so.
Will Griffith, I love you, Will Griffith. Great guy. So we were playing a show. I was playing a show with them, and I used to play with the band all the time in Brooklyn, and it just gets hard to manage sometimes. It's like they're all in multiple projects. They all have families, and so we had a show, and I was supposed to have the whole band with me, and I didn't. It was like somebody the night before couldn't come for some reason, and without that person, it didn't make sense for us to have the band, and somebody else got to say whatever it was. I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna play this show that I'm supposed to quote unquote headline in Brooklyn on Friday night. I don't have enough people coming anyway, but now I'm certainly I gotta go up there and play with just me and a guitar. I wasn't super well rehearsed, but I had promised myself that day, I was like, I'm going to play this new song. And I was like, and I hadn't finished writing the song, and I don't know what I was doing. I was like, I'm gonna punish myself. I was like writing between the sound check. I was just like, write something down, write the song. I was writing the song up until I went on stage. And normally for me, like, even though I'm not the most amazing and precise musician, I do have a little problem with perfectionism sometimes, and like the idea of going on stage by myself with the guitar and to sing a song that was unfinished and that was not stamped with my approval of this is good enough to share with somebody was just crazy. But I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do this. And it was one of the best things I've ever done. I'm not saying it was not my greatest performance. It's not my greatest song.
No, but letting go of
But,
that
like,
fear.
Yeah, and the audience fucking loved it. They were the whole story, the fact that I was willing to go up there, and they were willing to catch whatever I was throwing, and we were all, it was just, but like the whole, it just felt like a real special moment, and that moment would have never happened if I would have not just been like, fuck it, let's just go with it. And you miss the words or you make them up, and that's something, yeah, it's good. People like to see you take a swing sometimes.
I want to back up a little bit.
Sure.
Just because you've been great about, you've given me like a nice little crumb trail to follow here. So you stopped performing any music that isn't musical related, it sounds like, in high school. Like, you're not really
for the
into...
most part. I dropped out of singing my country music career. It probably went from like late elementary to like early high school, and then it was
the Garth Brooks cover.
Era,
yeah. The Garth. Is that what you call it? The Garth era.
The Garth era.
We could call it the Chris Gaines era if you want.
I'll call it. I don't know what I'm gonna call it. I will think about that. I have to ask my sisters. But that was my very serious era.
But it sounds like no matter what you're doing, you take it very seriously.
Too seriously, sometimes. But I'm still working on loosening up on that. But yeah. Definitely, like,
I know a guy.
Let me know it's over after this. I might know him.
You go to FSU to study theater.
I started in music.
You started in music, okay.
Yeah, but so things went a little south.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I might gloss over some of the details just because some of it I don't want to rehash in great detail, but
that's fine.
So yeah, I graduated Wakulla High School, and then I've always been like a big mama's baby. Like, our family's very close, but I also, as much as in my head, I was like, I have to move away because I'm going to have to move away and go get famous and rich. And then I'll come back and I'll be able to have tour buses and homes everywhere, and I can take care of my family, and we'll all be fine.
You're going to put Wakulla County on the map.
Oh yeah, that was the plan. And so anyway, I moved out. Like, I went to FSU. I got accepted to music school, and they had that Bright Future scholarship. I guess they still have that. And so it was free essentially to go there. And I was very excited. I was very studious, and I had been like a perfect angel up until that point. But I also...
So you weren't getting into trouble in high school at all?
I didn't go to parties. Yeah. I didn't drink. I would chastise my friends who did. I think I got drunk twice in high school, and I smoked weed spring break my senior year. Horrid. And I cried drunk that night because I had, quote unquote, lost my drug virginity, and I didn't even get high. I don't
know. It sounds like you were pretty high to me.
Yeah. So I'm sure I probably was. I was an idiot. So that's one thing that's confirmed. So I went, but my parents are amazing. They were pretty strict on us. Did us well growing up, kept us safe, all that kind of stuff. But there was also, I went from having pretty strict rules to follow to then going to my freshman year. I was like, I'm going to live on campus, girl. You ain't keeping me. I'm like, I'm going to have this experience.
And you're moving to the big city, Tallahassee.
We're going to town, honey. We're going to town. And like, it's 30 minutes away, so it was perfect in my head.
It's like far enough away to be independent, but not so far that like they couldn't help you in an emergency or whatever. Yeah.
And plenty of those emergencies definitely bubbled up. But I just went buck wild. It's not a new story. But I went from being like a straight A student, like high achieving, like all these things, to like to not drinking, not doing any drugs, to being like one night out with some friends on campus. Literally, it felt like, and I was like, the next day I'm like buying a pack of cigarettes. They're like, we're gonna do somebody said to me, Mom and Dad, you can pause the podcast or skip to the next part. But somebody said to me, like, you want to try ecstasy? And I was like, you know what? Sure. I'm living my life. I'm going to try ecstasy. And I did it, and it was really good.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
like
it's that's why they call it
ecstasy.
ecstasy.
It's really, and so, and then the next week somebody was like, there was a drug lord. I called him. He was so sweet. His name was, we called him Fluffy, and he had like pink hair, and he was selling drugs to the people at Reynolds Hall or whatever the fuck it was, and he. So anyway, they were like,
Statute of limitations is way past on that, by the way.
yeah,
Just
absolutely redact that.
I'll bleep the
So,
name.
thanks.
I'll just leave in Fluffy.
Fluffy, just leave
yeah.
Fluffy. I love you, Fluffy. I hope you're still living life and living large. He actually Fluffy was really helpful, but basically what happened is my friends were just like, I was like, so when are we doing that ecstasy again? And they're just like, we're not doing that. We're doing acid. We're doing acid next Thursday or whatever.
Well, to be fair, we always called ecstasy acid light.
Oh, I didn't even realize.
So
I learned something new. Well, they were like, we're doing acid, and I was like, okay. All I remember about acid, I was like, oh, acid is. I just was told one time somebody told me when I was 12 that it was the worst thing you could possibly, the worst drug in the world, make you crazy and it'll kill you. And I grew up believing everything I heard, and if they said no, you don't do it. But I was like, again, I'm like, I am living my big city life in Tallahassee on campus, so I was just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna fucking do it. And on one level, it was the greatest experience. The first time, folks, it's not telling anybody to do drugs, but for some folks, the first time that you trip on LSD or mushrooms, if it's not terrifying, can be really unbelievably magical. And I felt like I was in Alice in Wonderland, and it was quite amazing.
George Harrison said, you only need to trip on LSD once.
Yeah, I believe.
He was like, I did it hundreds of times, but you only need to do it once.
I agree with that, and I did it more than enough during that time. But I will say that like nothing to beat your first time. But I felt like anything after that was really just trying to get to that magical wonder of the first moment, where you're just like, there's a moment when it starts to happen where it's just like things start to twitch and come to life, and it's, this can't be happening. I'm literally in a movie. Like I'm the birds from Mary Poppins that are animated could any moment come or fly onto my finger. I could be in a barnyard with cartoon characters right now, and it would all make sense. And that is a wonderful feeling.
Yeah. I think for me, once I let go of trying to recreate the first time,
yes,
that's when I was able to find more magic.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Anyway, but drugs are bad. Don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs,
especially not the really safe ones like LSD.
Another tangent I went off on, but it went from like legitimately going to church, going to the youth revival, to like puberty hit me very late. So like it was started to take at the end of high school, I think, like where I was like maybe like senior year, before I was like starting to have what clearly everybody else feelings were having. I was dating girls, and it was very obvious that I was gay. And so I was dating girls, and the girls would be like trying to like make out eventually, because they were like, what is happening? Because like I would be like, we can't do this because we're gonna have to wait until we're married or whatever. Let's design our house together. What do you want to have? Like, how many children do you want to have? What are their names gonna be? Like, should we have 3-story house with like, I was interested in that kind of like chatter instead of, but then, so all this stuff started coming, getting close to graduation. Sex finally becomes like an issue, and I start to realize that like maybe, oh, this is all making sense now.
So you weren't really aware of it?
No, it was like, I was like, it was high school before. I definitely always known that something was different. I didn't know anything was wrong with it until people start telling you that somewhere between 4, 5, 6, and
that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's nobody, like a lot of these things that are just like innate about us, nobody tells us, like, until you're like told that something is
right, and then they sexualize
you're different, or right,
and then they sexualize it and shame you for it. So then it becomes like a massive complication too. It's just you feel shame for stuff that you've never even done, and or sometimes the real tea is, I remember having friends in middle school and early high school, and those friends like a lot of the straight boys who were any kind of popular guys were keeping their distance from me by that point. But I had a few friends, and they would tell me stories about, like, they would be calling me the F word and Wiley Gabey and writing shit about me on the walls. But then they would tell me about I'm sure I didn't experience it because whatever, a normal sexual exploration that happens about guys. But they would be telling me, like, literally having, like, circle jerks and telling me what happened with how big somebody's nuts were, and then calling me, like, gay. And I would be like, do you hear yourself right now? Do you hear what's going on? It doesn't change the fact that I am gay and I was gay, but I would be so mad. I would be like, they're calling me names and they're calling me this, and they're the ones that are doing these awful things over here. And then years later, you're like, wow, yeah, I'm not going to. But anyway, so all of this kind of culminates as I was starting FSU, moving away from home. And so a blessing and a curse. So I did not need to be on my own. I had a slob and couldn't do a lot of things despite being smart. But I was also able to go be myself,
right, and
go to Brothers. And
there
was an 80s night. I'm sure it's stuff of legend in Tallahassee, but like the Sunday night.
No, I think they still do it. Now it's 926, but it's pretty, like, Brothers has changed names like 3 or 4 times, but it's pretty much still the same bar it's always been. But
my friend and I went last 2 or 3 weeks ago. The first time I've been in years for the gay night or whatever, and it's shocking how similar it is.
Yeah. It's really close to me, so I'll go catch a drag show just on a random Friday.
Yeah. It's nice to have that little nostalgia.
Get a burger
kick. And they serve food, right?
Yeah,
so, like, there's that.
And they have good concerts too. They have some good shows there.
Yeah, I've seen and also like Steve Hofstadter's coming there soon, I think.
Yeah, and Shane Moss was just there, and then he was on the podcast too. So,
amazing.
But yeah, no, and it's a great venue. They got a great sound guy. They got
and Carl, who owns it, like, I've known him for years. He used to have these big parties at his house after Brothers would close, and it would just be like hundreds of people. I don't know. That was a long time ago when I had a lot more energy and the ability to stay out that late.
I think this actually goes. This is right where I wanted to ask you next. Actually, it was like you're listing all your influences at a young age, and what I'm hearing is a lot of women. What I'm not hearing is like gay icons of any kind. Like
Dolly Parton was not a gay icon at the time, like she is now.
Right. No. But I'm thinking like Bowie or Prince, or just like more, I guess, the androgynous kind of like gender bending.
Sure. Yeah.
Men that were really
it's the perfect segue for this, because that's right when I feel like I just started to discover those people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in Tallahassee, you're starting in music, but it sounds like you're not really even going to class very much, or were you?
At first I did. I was like, but then I stopped. Like, I would just I really slacked off. And then, oh God, then I remember like getting an email one day, probably when I was coming off an acid trip or something like that. I got really, for a few weeks, months in there, I was really into LSD.
The thing is, it is a drug you really have to treat with respect.
Yeah.
And not overdo it, or it can like make your life kind of spiral out of control. And it
definitely, I was just not. It's just being a wild 18-year-old. Never had any kind of. I had all the reins off. Never had that before. So figuring all that out was really intense. I managed to it wasn't quite the. I'm sure it seemed really bad at the time coming from where I was, because I was literally it was like angel child to like devil child in 1 year, like in terms of the way that my family thought of me, for sure.
And like the way that society measures success.
Right.
So to me, I'm hearing like this coming of age, like
discovering
yourself.
Gap year, this is what I would have been doing. If I was taking off a year between there, this is the experiences I probably would have been having if I was any normal 18-year-old.
But the way the world sees it is
bad.
You're failing.
And you're disappointing everybody, and you're like never going to be able to do anything musically if you're like out here smoking cigarettes and staying up all night and not making it to class. And I wasn't like, I was in the head of the voice faculty's like voice studio, and I had auditioned I had known him since high school, like, so it was definitely, there was some, like, it felt high stakes. It felt like a terrible time at the time, and it was in some ways, but like looking back now, it's such a shame that it wasn't like, I don't think we should celebrate any of my actions necessarily at the time, but having somebody be able to say, oh, this is pretty normal, like standard fare, like shit that you're going through, and standard fare, like stuff that you're experimenting with freedom. It is going to be difficult. You might want to get some discipline in here. You might want to make sure you're seeing a therapist. You might want to do whatever it is, this and that and the third.
Well, and that's why I think it's so important to have that representation, those icons, those people that growing up that you could have looked up to,
sure,
that you like didn't have. One of my best friends is a trans man, and one thing that he's told me is like growing up, the only representation he ever saw was like on Jerry Springer,
sure,
or those kinds of shows, and it was like something he couldn't even relate to at all.
100%.
And so, not having any kind of a example to be set for you or whatever, I can imagine that being really, just feeling really lost when trying to find yourself.
Yeah, and also not 100%. And also, I think that's one of the reasons that I rejected country, because I could see that coming, aside from just the fact, and also leaning into, I don't think I was conscious of it, maybe that I was leaning into music theater and classical music, which would have been more pro-queer and pro-gay and more like my people. So that actually was good in that sense, right? But also, it took me a while to realize that what I actually loved to do was not classical music, and what I loved to do was this thing that like I had left behind. And looking back at that, you're like, there was no one. There is no one. Like, if there's anybody up there, they are completely closeted, or if they've managed to get up there at all at that point. So there were no like, and like you say, like even going back to Jerry Springer, but even with, I remember Boy George. There's also, we'd have VH1 and we would watch these videos. No one blinks an eye, right? But Boy George probably caused some commotion, but also less commotion than I feel like is being caused today by other. It's just so bizarre to me how people.
Yeah,
that's another conversation. But
yeah, we can get there's nothing off limits here.
But yeah, but Boy George was also like.
But it is cyclical as hell.
Yeah, so cyclical. But there was some kind of that person was othered, or people on Jerry Springer, and they're being treated like a sideshow act. It was stuff that you did not necessarily resonate with or didn't think you wanted to be associated with. It was like something hidden in the shadows, something that was like nefarious or bad, right? Instead of, so the only country music like queerty you see that you grow up is like the fact that Dolly Parton's, all of her dresses are made by a gay man, right? Or that all these people, there's plenty of, you look back, you're like, oh God, how many gay men must there have been involved in like in Nashville from the 60s and the 80s? If you look at the rhinestones alone, right? You've got people like, I remember seeing Reba McEntire at the Civic Center and just being like, and feeling like watching the male dancers, and you're just like, oh, what's happening? They're all working within the industry. They're all in part of it or whatever it is, but it's just all like hidden, right? It's all, keep that shit to yourself and keep that shit quiet and pass, and don't do anything to upset the big dogs.
But the result of that is like when young people are coming of age and like wanting to be in that industry, they don't like have anybody to look to.
None.
Because it's all hidden.
None. And that's what's exciting about, I think, what's happened. Obviously, right now things are fucked. But like in general, especially with, I just think like the younger generations and stuff like that, there's just so much more of that. There's so much more visibility in queer music, in queer country even. Yeah. The last place that I expected to find a big queer country community was Brooklyn, New York. And when I moved to New York and played. I mean, I had not been playing music for a while, and someone reached out to me to play a show, and they were doing a queer country monthly. And I was like, wait, what is happening right now? And it was like, and I remember playing, and it was like such a life affirming like moment. It's the first show in New York City, and like I had enough time, I thought, to prepare for it. When I played to like my friends, I'd known people, no one knew that I played. I tell them I played music, but I hadn't played any for the couple of years that I'd been there. I was so intimidated. And Karen Pittleman of Karen and the Sorrows, who's an amazing musician, an amazing human being, has always championed me. But she reached out to me on Facebook Messenger, and she was like, "I heard from somebody that you play music, and we would love to have you at this like event." And I had 3 months, so I knew that was enough time to learn my songs and like practice and get my shit together.
And that's what kind of brought you back into singing on your own and performing on your own.
Yeah, I started in Chicago. I was in Chicago before that, and I started there. I jumped ahead of the story a little bit, but
no, that's fine.
But I moved to New York.
I've got ADHD,
with the
so
same, so more in common. And so basically, I started playing music in Chicago. I was getting my bearings there, and then I fell in love with New York and wanted to move there, and got an opportunity. And my intention, I told myself at the time, was that I will move there and I will sing and play music there. And I got there, and I was like, I can't do it. It wasn't a conscious thing, but I was just like, eventually I'll do that. I'll get to that. Sorry. And I never did because I was just scared and so stupid. And then I remember going to see a show, and the guy was great. He was wonderful. He was opening for a friend of mine. It has nothing to do with how good or not good he was. But like I went to the show and I saw the guy play. And it was just a guy and a guitar. And it was like, and he was fine, and he did good, and everybody liked it. And I also was like, I don't know what I'm worried about. I can do everything he just did. I can do it at least that good. And that was like a moment. And right around that time, Karen reached out to me and offered me this opportunity to play the Queer Country Monthly in November. And it was just like, I was like, oh my God, this is so great. So there's at this place called Branded Saloons, gay-owned place in Brooklyn. And it's still open, still owned by the same queers, and it's just been a great home for that, but also the community. And so, like, beyond that, it's like we went on this. I felt like I had found my people, like beyond music people, beyond whatever. It was like the fact that also we could reference the same stuff, that I would be talking about the same musicians, and they would know it, and they would know what it's like to be a gay person or a queer person who, as they said, and they coined it so well, it's love something that doesn't love you back. And that was my relationship with country music for a while. It's like something that felt like kind of the way it is with parents sometimes in other relationships, where you're like, it starts out very good and strong, and then like you start to have your own identity, and so that challenges something with them. And so that challenge, so being gay challenges the identity of country music almost in some way, and vice versa. And so you have this dissonance or whatever. And so to find people who had that very specific thing, and part of the thing, when I moved to New York, I remember people telling me, why don't you move to Nashville? If you want to do music, why don't you move to Nashville? And I was like, I'd never even really visited it, and I wasn't interested. I was like, I want to move there, and if I have to sacrifice not being around country music, then that's fine. And what I didn't expect to find was like a massive, at the time, what felt like massive to me, just like a big community of queer country folks. Some folks that I still hang out with, and a lot of them are very active today.
Were you aware of that scene existing anywhere at all?
No, not really. I wasn't paying attention to anything like that too. But also it was just like, and also I had just moved. I was in my 20s. I had just moved to New York, and I was also just I was more mature than my previous stories to a degree, and had a little bit. I'd spent some time in a big city. I was able to handle my shit a little bit better, but I was having the time of my life, and I also just at the time I think being afraid was also a great excuse not to do a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Because I could just keep going out and having a good time.
So how did you finally get out of Tallahassee, the Tallahassee greater metropolitan area, as we might call it? It sounds so ridiculous.
We're just going to call it town.
Because you got out of Wakulla.
Yeah.
Right. And got
And
into
I went back and
Tallahassee.
forth. Yeah. My parents have been real good to me in a lot of ways. I've shown up back at their house many times. And then once I left FSU, though, I was like, I wanted to. So I dropped music school after the first year, and then I switched to theater. And I finished that thinking I'm done with music. I've had many times I've been done with music, and so I'm going to be done with music. I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to go somewhere. And I was too afraid and didn't really believe in myself very much. But I was too afraid to move to New York. And also, everyone had to be convinced that if I move to New York, I'm going to end up dying of AIDS and being poor and like all these horror stories.
You'd watched Rent a lot.
Right? That they had.
Yeah.
And so I just was petrified of the place. And then everybody was like, the successful, like, top tier theater school students were all going to New York, and that felt intimidating and scary. But I had a teacher who just randomly told me one day, she was like, I think Chicago would be a great city for you after graduation.
I mean, I love Chicago.
Yeah.
Just as a city, it's
so good.
one of my favorite places.
So good. As long as it's not anywhere between late November.
I don't know if
March.
Oh man, I don't know if I could. I've been there like during New Year's, and it's
horrible. I love you, Chicago, but 40 degrees below zero is not cool.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to live there, but it's one of my favorite places to visit. How long did you live there?
4 years. That was my first. I left Tallahassee for Chicago, and so I went like this. The teacher told me that, and so I went and visited the city. I loved it. I also got to meet Dolly Parton because my friend had backstage passes. I also got my pockets cut out when I fell asleep on the train. So all of this was like,
my goodness,
it was very like.
I don't know that I've ever heard of that method.
Yeah, CTA. I fell asleep after we met. I had a big day. I had met Dolly Parton for the first and only time that I've met her, chatted with her. We went out. It was the first time visiting Chicago. I was drunk as Cooter Brown, and I was also young and cheap and fearless. I was like, I'm not taking a cab. I'm gonna take the train to my friend's hotel where we were staying, and I got on the red line, and it's like rocks you back and forth, and I'm just like, somebody's asleep across from me, and I'm just thinking to myself, God, that looks comfortable. The next thing I know, I wake up at the end of the red line at 95th and Dan Ryan, and I'm wearing a wagon wheel embroidered like Western T-shirt that's call it my lesbian era. Like I was a little like chubby and spiky hair, and I just looked cherub-like and a little androgynous, and I just bought all this stuff from the Urban Outfitters because I thought that was the coolest thing in the world because it was new to me and everything in the city was exciting. And anyway, I looked down. I didn't even look down. I get up off the stage. I panic. I'm like, it's like I've been out. We're in the train yards. It's like I run up and get off the train, and I don't know how long I've ridden it. If I've ridden it back and forth, what the fuck? And so I get off the train. I'm like, I just need to get a cab from wherever I am, and I get off the train platform, and I reach my hand back through my pocket, and it goes straight clean through my pocket. So they cut down. God. I was asleep, and apparently they cut down the side of it, slipped the pocket out, and then they pulled. They got the front of my pocket. They got this. They slid this with a razor blade and pulled out stuff from this pocket. Did not wake me up, and so like my wallet was gone. Everything. I had to like, and I was then I tried to get back on the train platform, and they won't let me on because I don't have a ticket, and I'm freaking out, and finally I freaked out that they got let me on. I ride back. I find my friends.
You show them the holes.
Oh yeah,
in your pocket.
You know, my parents are like, I call my mom. I remember I could tell she was pissed. Like it was like because I could tell that she didn't have any capacity to be like. I think I probably scared her so much that she was just like she'd give me the cold shoulder. I was like, I called her to get like I had to fax birth certificate or some shit because I had to get on the plane and I had no identification.
At least this was pre 9/11, I think.
It was actually.
I'm like, as I'm saying, I'm like, we got to be close.
It's probably close. It was right after. So it was soon after 9/11 and maybe like right after. So you'd think that it was going to be like, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get on the plane. And whatever it was, but it was basically the easiest at that point because maybe that whole year I'd been traveling, like where I'd gone. I remember traveling with a CD booklet, and they went through it was like the time when they were randomly pulling people off the line and going through everything and like scanning stuff. But like getting there early, not having an ID, being robbed, having the police report, all that kind of stuff. I was
They
like,
just like
it
fast
was
tracked
like
you.
slicker than goose shit through a tin horn, as they like.
Yeah, I feel like with all that official documentation at that time, they probably were like, we got bigger fish to fry than give you more of a hard time.
It was easier to go through that than actually going up there that trip. And I remember.
So that was just visiting.
Yeah, sorry. And so
you got robbed, and you're like, I'm gonna move there right away.
So the next thing I was like, you know what? I also met Dolly Parton, so it balances out.
Yeah.
And so then I went. I was like, I need to figure this out. I need to go in like February so I can make sure I can handle this. And I remember going up there in February and whatever. So, and then January, and the next June I moved, and I left here and was there for 4 years, and that's when I started like writing songs. That's when I wrote the first songs that I admit to writing today. Like,
and at that point, you're performing under the name Goldenchild.
I'm just Wiley. That's just Wiley Gabey. Just I'm trying to figure out. I'm just writing a couple of songs. I went to like the Old Town School of Folk, did their songwriting, some kind of songwriting workshop, and I was taking lessons and I was trying to get like serious. I'd met some musicians who were what I thought was older at the time, which was like babies now. But they were older musicians. So some of them I had worked with at this publishing company, and they took me in a little bit, and they like put me on stage and tried to encourage me, and I was still.
And this was after you'd done this was in Chicago.
Yeah, this was before New York. So yeah,
before New York. Okay, I'm just trying to.
I know. I jumped.
That's literally how this always goes. So don't worry. That's my job is just to keep it straight.
Well, if you have any questions, if you have any questions, if you need them.
So you're in Chicago and you meet these group of older musicians.
Yeah, I'm playing and doing stuff, but also just like very half-assed. Like it was definitely a lot of I was like, I can sing, I can do country music easy. You know, like it was weird because I'm coming back to some of the singer-songwriter-y stuff, and not maybe giving it the respect it deserved, even though I was dabbling in it, and also it was like being in your 20s, coming out, being 1,000 miles away from home, being in a big city. I had never spent any time in any big cities, so that was just like similar to New York at the time. Afterward, it was just like mind-blowing. Learned a lot of lessons, but also like I was going there I was like, I'm going to become like an actor. Maybe I'll play some music on the side.
Were you out at this point?
Oh yeah, fully. But yeah, basically like that freshman year, there was like no turning back. Eventually, it's also like we talked about it being a small town. I'm going back for a second, but I got an email one day when I was at FSU from my high school British lit teacher, the English honors senior year. Redact that name, but who I loved, but also was very, very on the side of Christ, and in a way that wasn't like really probably on the side of Christ, but
it's like a God, please save me from your followers thing.
And she was wonderful and very smart, and she's a lovely person, I'm sure. But she emailed me, and she was just like, and I actually appreciate her for doing it. It wasn't a cruel thing. It was like, there are some rumors coming down the pike, and there's some talk here at the high school, and basically like word up on the street is that you're gay. And I wanted to be like, no shit, y'all been telling me this for 17 fucking years, and now you're gonna be like, did y'all know that Wiley Gabey is gay? I'm like, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, motherfuckers. But so she warned me that if it was getting around that people would see me kissing boys and dancing at the gay bar, that maybe that I should tell my parents before they hear it from somebody else. And
I understand why you appreciate that email. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It was complicated at the time.
Yeah.
But also I think that her, and I appreciate what she said. And then all hell broke loose. Things were bad, things were good. And so then Chicago was like, I already felt pretty comfortable being out here. Comfortable in the sense of like, this is who I am.
And comfortable in your own skin, at least.
Yeah, more so than I had been.
Right. And, as much as you maybe ever are. And exactly.
I'm like, totally. As much as
I'm just speaking from myself.
Project that right on. You're accurate. but yeah, it's Chicago was just like that was like full balls out freedom because Chicago, right by Wrigley Field in Wrigleyville is Boys Town. Which,
You probably had watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off a lot.
Yeah, I'd seen that plenty of times. I didn't care. In my head, there is so in the north side of Chicago, starting at I don't know about Belmont. There's 10, 14 blocks on Halstead that's like Boys Town, and it's like rainbow spires on every street corner, and it's so I think it's like one of the first like neighborhoods that had like such a flagrant like out. There have been neighborhoods that are known for being queer or enclaves for gays, but this was like out and proud Boys Town. There's no hiding what it's about. That was just the best thing. I was like that was where I lived just north of there. I had my own apartment. It was like I had no one to answer to, no one that I would know, and this is the third largest city in the United States, and it's progressive, and there's gay people everywhere, and so that was like that's where it felt like safe and secure in a way that it had never felt here at the time. Even when I felt my most secure, there's always like head on a swivel kind of vibe, like somebody, especially like Wakulla, you're like you just can't. Even now, when I like
I was gonna say, has that changed really? Like
what's changed is that everybody knows gay people. You just can't escape it. That's what's so nefarious about this goddamn anti-trans bullshit that they're trying to fluff everybody. They have frenzied everybody into. It's like such a small percentage of the population, and it's also very effective in a nefarious, cruel, fucked up way because it's weirdly like to me sometimes not the anti-trans part, a sign of progress in the other areas. The L and the G. Specifically, if you're like white cis male and fit into some kind of like heteronormative kind of thing, and you don't don't get too queer, you don't get too gayed up. Everybody has members in their family. It's just unavoidable. Everybody's gone through that. But the people within the queer community, specifically cishet white dudes, like, and others are also not allies to all the time to their trans people. They don't understand trans people. They don't want to be included in that. There's always been a thing with specifically gay men that like the moment somebody knows that you're a drag queen, even if that's just like your job on the side, that is you just lost hot points, right? It's some kind of weird thing that like it's so less of a problem right now. I feel like it was definitely a bigger problem for
like when you first went to New York and back in that
even now
sooner.
Even now I would say there are plenty of people who like are racist people or transphobic people or who have or do things or say things that like are transphobic or racist because I don't know.
I mean, there are gay men that hate women.
Oh yeah, that was my next part. I was gonna say. So all that stuff that also goes into the trans or into the drag queen situation. I mean, when I was younger, I was guilty of it too. Any femininity is seen as even as a gay man. So it's like for years, like I tried, which might be hard for a lot of people to believe now, but there were parts of my life where it was like I was trying to dial in the most like masculine version of myself. Even as a out and proud, I was like, and because it's more attractive. And I don't say that it's more attractive. I disagree with that statement. I'm saying that
it's considered that.
Or it has been. And it's
perceived as.
Such a shift. And that's one of the things that I will say one of the greatest things about living in a place like New York for me is because I still am like, I say I would love like redneck from Wakulla. Like I'm gay and I've traveled more so than maybe some other people that I grew up with, but I'm still like learning so much. And if I wouldn't have been in Chicago, if I wouldn't have been in New York City, if I wouldn't have been around this diversity in all different ways, I don't know where I would be right now because like I've fallen prey to many of these things. And you have that light bulb that goes off in your head sometimes when you're just like, oh my God, that is misogyny that I've been perpetrating and like being a part of. And or that's something that joke was like, or this thing is whatever I've been doing is like kind of fucked up, but also when you first learn of something that you're like, or when you first start understanding. I had like people that were so patient with me when I was trying to understand gender and sexuality, and wait, why am I going to this conference, and how is this person, wait, you said that this person was a biological, like, one sex, and now is this, and now they're dating I like all the same questions that I feel like a lot of people are trying to wrap their heads around now, like we've all had, right? But the biggest
combatant to hate is just like literally just knowing people of that like group.
Can't hate up close.
And not only that, but you learn that they're not like like no group of people is like uniform.
Yeah, right?
Like no, except maybe billionaires.
Yeah,
like,
I would say that.
Like I tell a joke that I'm like, I'm a leftist, but there is one minority I fucking and but see, the thing about billionaires is they choose to be that.
Exactly.
You can't, when you're talking about a uniform, no group of people that isn't choosing to be that is uniform. Like that doesn't make any sense. People are people. But it goes back to what you're saying, like the progress of everybody in their family, like kind of everybody having someone in their family to have that experience of exposure and getting to know and understanding. Like more gay people were out, so more people knew they knew gay people, and like that. And then also once you combine just getting to know people that are different than you with recognizing that your landlord isn't fucking trans, your boss isn't an illegal immigrant, the fucking CEO isn't some. It's just, come on, guys.
It is wild, but the brilliance of it is that it's that age-old kind of rung up the ladder kind of thing too, where it's like they can say, we're fine with LGB. We're fine with lesbians and gays. We've got some real good neighbors over there, and they come to church with us, and they do this and they do that. And I don't understand it, but whatever it is, that is the norm more now when it comes to it. Again, as long as you're fit and which I'm not explaining that to you. I'm just yapping, but
no, but I think you're bringing back the point you're trying to make that even though there is still some really heinous shit against certain groups of the LGBTQ plus community, there's progress in some of the letters. Like some of the letters are accepted. Like we just got to get.
But I'm saying that progress is why that progress is slippery slope, because now they can say, okay, we can't fuck with this. We can't. I'm not gonna come for. We might tell our fundamentalist people in this pocket that we're gonna try to dissolve gay marriage, but we're not trying to upset people. We got gay people who are voting conservative now, whatever the fuck it is. Right. But the fucked up thing is that they can get those gays, right? And then they can tell them, you but not your trans friend.
Right.
You but not your trans friend. So
they brought them into
the fold.
The kind of heteronormative, as long as they play a certain way.
Yeah.
As long as they are a certain role.
You behave yourself, you keep yourself small enough, quiet enough, professional enough, not so rowdy, whatever these rules are. Right. And then you can stay and do whatever. And we just can't we can't go. That's a bridge too far. And so people become okay with that. And I think it's great that we have progress, but that's what makes it so interesting and so calculated and so amazing. They take this thing that people don't understand, this small, tiny pocket.
Look at the ICE agents.
Oh my God.
They're like half of them are brown, but half of them are Hispanic.
I see
or
it.
more.
It's just devastating.
So I feel like we could talk about this kind of stuff all day, but I really want to hear more about your story.
Yeah, sorry. I was like,
no, I think we've talked about it enough to where it's important to what you're trying to share. I just don't want us to go too far down the rabbit hole of talking about the state of. One thing I like this podcast to be is something that will hopefully, if you listen to it in a year, you listen to it in 2 years,
I love that.
there might be some references to stuff going on, but for the most part, it's pretty much.
I love
We're
that.
talking about stuff that already happened.
Evergreen biography.
As much as we can. I think, that being said, you can never separate what's going on in the moment from the way you're telling the story now, too.
Sure.
So I think it's important to acknowledge the context in which you're telling the story, not just the context in which the story happened. Right?
100%.
So you moved to New York. Well, like, what kind of drove you to New York out of Chicago? Because
the cold.
The cold, really?
Going,
yeah.
sorry, yeah.
No, if it's as simple as that, then that's.
It wasn't as simple as that. I had never been to New York. I'd been always petrified, like a little bit to go, but always. Muppets Take Manhattan is one of my favorite films of all time.
Me too.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
when it starts, like when the skyline, it like shows the Chrysler Building and everything, and like I had that on vinyl actually. I still have a copy of it. It's scratched to hell and back, but it was like my.
Does it have the track where they're playing the song in the diner on the glasses with the spoon?
I think so. Yeah,
because that's the moment.
That's such a great moment. It's the first time you get Rhythm
the
of the
music
Rat.
is what brings Kermit back.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Together again. Yeah. I mean, I watched it so many times. Like I used to get so with that TriStar horse would like come across the screen. Like we had that recorded on VHS. I love that movie so much. But that was my first. That was my New York like first time like being really in love with that. But I had never seen it and never understood its scale. And coming from Wakulla in a small town, our nearest neighbor was like a mile away, and it was my grandma, right? Like
Yeah,
we lived
yeah.
I grew up in the middle of the woods, and so Chicago was big, but Chicago was also very manageable in a way. There's something that's, I say this with love, like it's a good thing, but there's something so Midwestern, provincial, something about Chicago that's so, it's very welcoming in a lot of ways.
Did you have a similar kind of affinity towards it through movies like Ferris
No,
Bueller?
no,
we mentioned
yeah.
Ferris Bueller in jest, but I think like Blues Brothers.
I had what I
Ferris
feel like there's a very
Bueller's,
specific
you know.
Chicago movie that I can't think of. It was Mannequin filmed. No, that was somewhere else. I definitely had Chicago movies like the Hughes films and stuff like that. But it was not like, it just wasn't like as strong of a transmit. There was something about, even though I was living in Chicago and it was a gay mecca for me at the time, something about New York really screamed that. Something about the edginess. I've always been like, I think of like when I first started to like get out of high school and met my first gay friend. He introduced me to a ton of great music, and I remember Debbie Harry has always been like instant light, instant just wow, that's the most beautiful woman. When I was younger, that's the most beautiful woman. She's so sexy. She's so amazing. She's so edgy. Her songs are so good, but they're also, it's like there was some amalgamation of that and that kind of like something about that gritty but like pretty and stylish thing. I've always, even like back in Tallahassee, I remember being like, if you wanted to mesmerize me by a person or something like that, it's like being at some party where the older kids were at, and there's some, I guess we would call them hipsters, but somebody like going to Railroad Square back in the day and like seeing somebody who looked like I don't know what we used to call them. I'd be calling them like, God, like so indie or some stupid shit like that. Like,
no, maybe.
Yeah, but
goth or
just like that kind of like somebody who had their own kind of style that was something different, like tattoos and jagged hair, whatever it was.
I think you're touching on something that's interesting about Tallahassee and probably a lot of like cities of its size is I don't know that we had enough of the weirdos to really have denominations of weirdos.
Right? They all were together.
Yeah, it's like the freaks and the punks and the goths and the hipsters.
The epitome.
Like they were all hanging out at Epitome. Yeah.
All together. That's where I met somebody to do. And so it was like, that was one of the first places. The Epitome was like, actually, that's where I first played music with a guitar, like writing my own songs. The first time was an Epitome open mic. I can't like that. Anyway, I know we're past that.
No, I can't. Now I just want one of their mocha milkshakes.
Oh my God! I would go smoke Camel Red Lights in the Epitome on the smoking section.
We used to call that an orgasm in a glass.
Oh my God! Oh my gosh!
Shout out to the Epitome mocha milkshake.
We love you, Epitome.
So I worked next door at Floyd's as a teenager.
Yeah.
That was my first job. Was at Floyd's music store, and like
legends.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember like carrying Vince Neil's guitars and War's costumes and shit. Like it was fucking bizarre. But then we we would get these like one-off, like Kenny Chesney would stop and do like a one-off club date on his arena tour. He'd do an acoustic club date at Floyd's.
Kenny Chesney
on his like arena tours. It's just like
wow,
crazy.
that's so
shit
crazy.
Like
What
that.
a cool spot to like work and get to be around at that time.
It was wild. It was otherworldly but I've never beyond like being in like a boys ensemble or choir or whatever. Like, I'm not musically inclined. I don't. Part of it, and one thing we've talked about on this podcast a lot is like, you have to really want to do it too. And I've never, like what you were saying earlier, like things that were like easy for you right away were things that you always were like that same way. And music was never easy. Other than just singing along or whatever, music was never easy for me. And I never could, like, I tried guitar lessons and things like that, but never, when it came down to it, I didn't want it bad enough to put in the practice or whatever.
I can understand that. There have been times when I've not wanted it bad enough to put in the time, and I struggle with that even now of being like where I maybe wish I was in various parts of my life, and think to myself, maybe one of the reasons I didn't get there at that or where I wanted to be at a certain point is you have to put in the time. I don't think I've seen how important that is, especially in music, until a lot of us, or I can't speak for a lot of us, a lot of times in my life, I have thought, I have this great song and I have a decent voice and I can do this and I know I can entertain these people, and just somebody's got to find this out, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be discovered and it'll all just work out. And what
on the upside, I think it's easier to find your audience than it's ever been, right?
Sure.
But it's also harder.
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, it's
like
also,
more possible.
It's real tricky.
Let me ask you this. Were you still wanting to be an actor when you moved to New York, or?
No, I had set that, I burned that down. I just didn't, I found when I was in Chicago trying to do some Second City stuff that I like had fun with it, but I didn't, the theater school of it all was a lot for me. It's competitive and it's not always very welcoming, and it feels extra and cutthroat sometimes. When I was younger, I didn't find, how do I say this? I did not feel like I belonged as part of the community. I didn't feel, and that could be,
I see.
No
like
one's
in the
fault.
theater community.
Yeah, I just felt I was like, this doesn't feel right to me, and I also don't feel like I trust these people. And it's no disrespect to anybody; it's more my own insecurities than anything at the time. But
and what strikes me is it sounds like you were first drawn to it because you felt you could trust these people and like you could relate to them, and they were like maybe a safe haven for. And it almost seems like once you were out, once you had like figured out who you were and were comfortable, like more comfortable in your own skin, maybe like the rest of it wasn't like what was left for you wasn't that appealing anymore.
It wasn't, but also, I just remember, this is going to sound so pathetic because I don't hang on to this in terms of, does it make me feel bad? But it made me feel really bad at the time. I was doing a play at Tallahassee Little Theater. It was probably one of the last plays I did. And it was like, I was the lead and I was having so much fun. Katie Sharble wrote me it was my first time I ever got reviewed. It was glowing. It was like, I was so proud and I was having such a great time. And two of my castmates, both of them who are amazing actors and were really good, and they were a little more darlings of the crew than I was. I think they both wanted the part that I got. So that was one part of it. And I think that was like, and maybe it was just all like unintended stuff, but I remember right before we were going on for like the opening night, and I was just like soaring. It was like, at that point I thought I was famous, right? Because I hadn't even left Tallahassee and I had gotten a good review and I was in the Democrat limelight.
Big
whatever.
fish, small pond.
Exactly.
Kind of
That's
thing,
the story. And it was really hard because coming from Wakulla, where I was big fish, small pond, it took me years in Tallahassee even I felt like I really had to fight to even get to that point, because I felt like I got to Tallahassee, and you go to FSU, especially at the time, theater school, music school, that's the best singers and actors I've seen. So talented. And so
I've seen some incredible shows.
Some of the best shows I've ever seen. I have seen more great shows back in the day at FSU than I have on Broadway that I've paid too much money to see. But right before, like, one of these guys, they were like giving me like a break a leg kind of like, let's do it thing. And then they were just like, one of them said something to me like, for me and Derek, we're actually like planning to do this for a living. Like it's some kind of comment he said was was like definitely intended to be a dick move, but also and to rock my game or whatever. But it was like shit like that where people are trying to get in your head so you don't do well. I know that I don't think either of these people would do this today, and neither of them would think anything of it. But the fact that you would do that to somebody that you're also like in the production with,
Right.
so you're willing to sabotage your own situation because somebody got the role and they're doing good at it and they're getting praise for it. And so you think that it's a good idea. So that kind of behavior doesn't, I'm sure it exists in music, plenty of places.
It definitely exists in comedy.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm
Like
sure it
like
does.
probably more than I've seen in other communities sometimes.
I can see that. Yeah.
Just sometimes. I think partially because it is like it's a solo thing
Yeah.
in here, like completely, and everybody is in it for themselves, and everybody thinks that they're the funniest, or they'd be
Sure.
writing the jokes that the other people are telling. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, 100%.
were you like trying to pursue anything when you moved to New York, or
I
did
mean,
that
in my head, I was going to pursue music.
Okay.
I was like, but also
you were scared?
I was scared. And also I had gone back and forth, but I was bartending and then I was working I got pulled into a publishing job and I was like, oh, I'll do this publishing thing and maybe I won't worry about music anymore or theater or anything like that. Maybe I'll be a real guy, do a real job, whatever the fuck that means. And it's funny because I wish I could go back and tell myself different, but you start to get a certain age, you're like, oh God, I'm 24 now. I really should like give up this dream. I got to get this.
It was the opposite for me.
Yeah.
I was a young dad, and it wasn't until like my kid was an adult, pretty much, that I was like, oh, now I'm gonna do the shit that I've always wanted to do, and
Sure.
but I understand what you mean,
Yeah.
because I still like my clock's ticking.
No, I feel the same way. How old is your son?
My daughter is she's 18,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like at this point, and I don't really talk about her on here, but
Sorry.
no, that's fine. I'm just
Makes
saying, it wasn't until like I was like, I played that game of, okay, I got to do the responsible thing for all this time. And it was the opposite for me. Once I didn't have to do it anymore, or didn't feel like it was too risky to do what I really wanted to do. I was like, all right, this is, you only live once. This is my only life.
That's where I am right now. Yeah.
And I think once you get there, no matter how you get there, like that's when you set yourself free.
Yeah. I hope so.
My question is, when you started writing songs on like with frequency, with a regular basis, did you find that outlet start to calm some of the other stuff in your life?
Yeah, it's taken a long way for it to get to that point. When I first started writing songs, it was not about processing things for me as much as it is now. Like where I think that I wanted to, I cared about the songs and I cared about what I was writing about to a certain degree, but I wanted to do a good job, and to have somebody tell me I did a good job probably is like at its most basic. Like I mean,
I feel like the baseball story. Like there may be something to the baseball,
right? We got lots of stories for it. But I was writing songs for other people for a while, not literally, but I was like, how do I make this cool? How do I make this, and not necessarily.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Creating for the approval, and I'm not.
You were writing stuff you thought other people would like.
Yeah, and I
not
wanted
stuff
to,
for yourself.
Exactly, and ironically, most of that stuff is like, and I'm not saying that's not entirely true, but that was definitely colored the experience more than it does now. And whereas, especially with these new songs that I've written, I feel like it's about stuff that is heavy on my heart that I need to say that I don't know how to say in a conversation, or that I am unable to say in a conversation, or that just it's too much for my emotional life to be able to handle it a normal way, so then I can get that out. and just tell the truth and just be like, what, and also to choose for me, not what makes me happy. What do I like, instead of trying to craft. You can see the work sometimes when you look back at some of the stuff that you do. Maybe I know I can with like my work when I look back in it's songs, whether I've recorded them or it's the lyric that I've written. I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that's actually pretty good, or nice try, but like we must use flowery language, or like this. I have to find some kind of interesting wordplay here. And when really, honestly, like the simple truth is fine. And frequently, what I found that resonates more with me when I'm writing is like sometimes the most simple stuff. I don't give a fuck is that song came out like one of the fastest songs that's ever come out of me. In fact, the point where I didn't really feel like I'd earned it, and I didn't think that I was like, I don't know if it's even good. It feels like it's just some whatever, but it came out. It was like just writing through the aftermath of a conversation with.
I Don't Give a Fuck, streaming on all platforms this Friday.
Thank you so much. On Dial Back Sound.
On Dial Back Sound. So you're in New York. I feel like here's where we are in the story. You're in New York. You find the queer country, the queer country community. I like the alliteration there.
QC.
The QCC. Man, if they're not using that, they definitely,
you're welcome. Thank you so much.
But it sounds like that's when you were like, your fear went away, right? Because you
started, yeah.
Or started to, or that was like the catalyst.
That was the real turning point for me. Like where I was like, it became something that like started to crystallize to me what I could do, what I wanted to do, like what was possible, and that maybe I had found some people.
Well, and it sounds like you found a way to be yourself.
Yeah.
Because this is the story I've heard so far, is like you have these two kind of identities that are constantly put against each other.
Sure.
Being this rural redneck town boy and queer as hell.
Yeah.
And those things are at odds
Yeah.
until you find this community in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. And also what was so cool about it is not just because it's like this queer country thing, right? But like also that I get to be in New York and in Brooklyn, and I can pull out a song that, maybe I'm singing some old George Jones song that my dad used to love to hear me sing, and I can play it here, and these people also love it and know the song and remember and had the same experience.
And that's what I mean. Like all aspects of your identity are being embraced in this community, and
not
and
just
for the first time.
Yeah, and having all. Yeah, it's really exciting. And because it was like first show. First off, in New York, it is hard to get people to come to shit. So it's easy to get people to come to the first thing you do if you've never done something. Sometimes. Yeah. I got a bunch of friends to come. They all were really supportive, and so I was like, now look at this. I'm a singer now. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm like, and so like.
What I realized very quickly is you have to learn like your friends you can't rely on them because
you burn them out.
Not only that, but if you're gonna do what you want to do for real, like your friends can't be the ones that carry it.
100%.
They can support you and all that, but once you perform 5 times a month in the same city or 5 times a week or whatever, like you're like, no, dude, I don't expect you to be there.
100%.
And not only that, I can't rely on you to be. I need to be focused on getting other people that have like no fucking clue who I am to like me. Yeah,
absolutely. And who have no like stakes in it, no skin in the game.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like who don't have to like, you don't have to be worried about. Me
is
in a different
this song
way.
about me? Or
right, exactly. Or like, are they gonna fuck this up? Are they ready? Whatever it is he gonna crack a note? Is he gonna? You date somebody and you meet somebody and you're like, I'm a singer-songwriter.
And then they come out to a show,
and then they're like, oh God, I'm sure that it sounds good, but then they also more frequently, I think, before they see you, they're like, oh God, what if they suck?
I'd almost like that to be my first date.
I always say,
in a way,
that if I'm gonna meet the man of my dreams, he's gonna see me doing. It's gonna happen like me doing. I'd rather him come to a show, see me doing what I do, and then talk to me than the other way around.
Or even if I like meet somebody on a dating app or something. I'm like, I might suggest you come see me. Because then they can, if they hate what I'm doing,
they can walk away.
I don't ever have to even know they were there.
Yeah, that's so smart. You got a lot of good ideas. This is really for all you single musicians out there.
What's terrible though is I'm terrible at following my own advice. You know?
I think a lot of us have that problem. I definitely do.
I know a big part of your story is reconnecting with Teresa, who you briefly mentioned earlier in New York. Teresa Jimenez was in Tallahassee for a good chunk of my college years, playing in a band called the Silver Daggers.
Absolutely.
That I used to go see all the time. I still, when I'm driving to Sop Shoppy, I'll put that record on and listen to Sop Shoppy River.
Oh, good. So good. I still have that CD.
And
all for the money. And
I remember when Dave broke his arm.
Oh, yeah.
And he played a bunch of shows one-armed. We were probably in a bunch of shows.
It's such a small world.
But you reconnect with it. She moved to Brooklyn, and I'm like, this is my side of this story is like, well, the final nail in the coffin of the music scene in Tallahassee. Because at that point, venues are closing left and right. Yep. Everybody's just doing cover songs, and not only that, they're just doing covers of stuff you could hear at karaoke any night of the week.
100%.
And
there wasn't much going on.
And Dave was actually in this other band called Me and the Devil.
Yes,
but that band moved, Silver Daggers moved, and I'm like, fuck. But the other side of that story is you get Teresa in New York.
Where we met in high school, like we were a production of The Wizard of Oz at Leon High School here in Tallahassee.
You were the lion and she was Dorothy.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Yep. And so we met. I was enamored of her. We got along really well.
Her voice is just
unbelievable. Best singer I know.
And her presence
everything.
And now I met her when she was years later when she had developed all this stuff as a solo artist or as a front person of a band, right?
It's magnificent to watch.
Magnetic too. Like you can't take your eyes off of that. Yeah.
I say it all the time. I just get goosebumps because it's like it is.
Me too.
It is. I don't know anybody. I don't think personally, definitely not that well, who has what she has and can do what she does. It's just magnificent. And like when I met her, she was a freshman in high school. She pissed everyone off, I'm sure, because she came in and got the lead role.
Was just so good.
It was just a perfect voice at that age, and I was a senior at the time, so it was like I was feeling good. I come from Wakulla and got casted as a lead at Leon with the Big Dogs, and and so that meant a lot to me. Those people had always welcomed me, but it was like a big deal for me. I'd never been in a musical before that was like real because Wakulla didn't have the people to do it.
That was the first
major real musical I'd ever done.
Well, and Leon they would have summer productions.
Yeah, that was the summer. Yeah, because
okay.
Anybody could audition for the summer one. And then that year it was at TCC because they were renovating Leon.
I went
High
out
School.
for South Pacific one year, but I didn't end up. I just didn't end up doing it. It was too much of a commitment for.
I did the same with one of the things the year before. I think maybe I was doing like they put me in the ensemble for Oklahoma or something, and I decided against doing it, whatever the fuck it was. But that summer we met, and that was great. We fell in love. It was over. I knew, I went to do college, and then by the time she was probably starting FSU and getting into the scene, I was already gone to Chicago.
Did y'all stay in touch this whole time?
Not really, not much.
It was you reconnect in New York, and it was like old friends that hadn't spoken in years, kind of thing.
Meet Teresa very randomly. So the Silver Daggers had come to Manhattan, and I had no idea. And
it's probably like 2012,
right around that time, yeah. And so I ended up reconnecting with Teresa, and so we at this time, like the same within months of or weeks of
the queer country
thing, I get connected with Teresa.
But she wasn't there at that show.
She wasn't at the show, no. And so that was very weird. And so it was like reconnecting with her, and so it's been years, like a really long time. And so
but it seemed probably like a sign.
It was like looking back, I've been like, wow, this is really like crazy how this all worked out. It always blew my mind. It happens all the time living in New York, though. Like, or especially when I was first there, it would just shock me. You run into people like ghosts from your past. Like, you think you're never going to meet somebody. Like, the first night I was ever in the middle of Manhattan, I ran into 3 different people I knew from like, the most, like, not people you would expect to see there, right? One day walking to school, you meet like this guy I went to high school with in Wakulla who I haven't seen since graduation day. Like, pulls up in a car driving through Manhattan because he rented a car, whatever the fuck. It's like the random people you walk into is
Who
very
rents
weird.
a car in Manhattan?
Who
Anyway.
exactly? Exactly. So anyway, so like run into Teresa, we reconnect, and so we start. I'm playing music, and then like they're playing music. They're wanting to play music. The Silver Daggers are playing in New York, so I'm just like, let's play music together. In my head, I was like, I'm going to open up for them, and they're going to do their thing. That's what kind of what we did. Like, I mean, that's what we would do. And I thought, I was like, here we go, got it. Got my partners, talented people I haven't seen. This is after I had a couple of good shows, I was like, I'm just gonna put my shit out there. And so like, I reached out to like, there's a gay bar, a leather bar / music venue / whatever on the west side in the West Village in Manhattan called Rock Bar. And it, by day, sometimes they like shot like porn or whatever in there. You got to make your money. But at night, their goal was to be a place where queer musicians could also play. They wanted to do that more than they probably were able to because, the money was more in like drag shows. Like that was very like a bare leather adjacent kind of crew, super friendly. But I didn't know anything about them except they were a gay music venue is what in my head. So I like reach out to them and I'm just like, I sent them like a picture and like a bio and a clip from the concert and like,
essentially a press kit.
Yeah, a little press kit, and they must have thought that I was way better than I was, and they definitely thought I was better looking. I'm sure because that picture was real good. But they gave me a night immediately, and we ended up having like a really good turnout because again that first show luck was like I've got this spot in Manhattan. I'm playing in the West Village, blah, blah, blah. And after that, they offered me a monthly, Eric and Rick, I love you. They offered me a monthly show, sight unseen. I think they thought that same crowd was going to come every month.
Yeah.
And I think I did too, because I'd never done any kind of monthly kind of thing. So
not only that, but you are looking for confidence anywhere you can get it.
At anything
that point, for sure.
It's so true.
I mean, I don't mean that in any way, but
no,
like,
it's so true.
Yeah, like you think, and I speak from experience myself. Yeah, you think, oh, everybody's super excited about the first time I did this thing. They're gonna be this excited every time, or
it's just like acid. It's like the first time you trip. It's like it's the same thing. It's like, oh, that first time was off the charts, and then the second time you're like, oh, it's still good, but not the same.
No, and I think there is some truth to that. Like, it'll never be the same.
Sure.
And you always remember your first.
Amen.
But I think once you stop trying to recreate your first, no matter what it is,
100%. Oh, that's good advice. I'm gonna
because once you let go of the idea that all your friends are going to come to every show, like you no longer are bummed out when none of your friends come.
Eviscerate those expectations because it actually makes life so much easier. Yeah. Freer.
So did you and Teresa start playing a bunch of shows together?
What happened? We started playing shows. We had a really great show. And then the Silver Daggers were no more.
Yeah.
And so I was really bummed about that. Everybody, I'm sure, was bummed about that.
Yeah, we were too. Yeah, I mean, I remember when that happened. It was...
Yeah. So around that time, I got to meet this guy, Jeff Doker, who was from Tallahassee and grew up here. And he and Teresa were lifelong best friends since like preschool or something.
Okay.
And so I had never met him. And so like he just happened to be living in Brooklyn. He is an angel sweetheart. Just one of those rare Cubans that is just like a unicorn of a man, just the kindest, gentlest, smartest, brilliant soul. And so we all became like close. And Teresa and I I've been hanging out with all of them, but like Teresa and I like continued to work together, and we started playing songs together and doing more stuff. And we found out that our voices anybody's gonna sound good singing with Teresa Jimenez. I will say that, like that right there. But
or bad,
or terrible, right? Yeah. And believe me, I've done that too.
I feel like if you're not up to snuff, like she might expose those cracks real quick.
Well, you know what? You think she could, but she would never, because like
no.
But it's I mean, it's like being, it's I don't know. It's some. I mean, if I were to stand, what am I trying to say? Nothing that's going to sound good. But yes, I 100% agreement with you on all levels. And so we started playing music, and we started singing together, and then everybody was writing stuff, and Jeff, who was like, I forget his role at the time. He's got lots of degrees. I feel like he's got a PhD in mathematics or something like that. So I'm sorry, I'm forgetting, but he's is one of the smartest people I know. But you'd never know. No pretense about him at all. And but he was just like, Teresa was like, hey, Jeff emailed a song. He was very interested in our music, and he was like involved in giving us advice and stuff like that. And he was becoming a new friend for me. But then he basically had written a song called "Searching for Strangers," which is on the Goldenchild record that we did. And it was a duet he wrote for me and for us to sing. And it was like a country song. And I couldn't believe that it was a song by somebody I didn't know was a songwriter. It wasn't like a first outing. It wasn't like all that sweet. It was like, hot damn, this is a great song. And it's like complicated and complex in ways. And it's really like well done. And he has all these ideas musically that just, again, genius brain. And so, like, Teresa
and it's on that record that you put out in, 2015?
Yeah. Yep. It's on Bridges. And Teresa's on that. She sings on it. And so anyway, that was that brought us together. So it was like we formed this band called the Choir Diary, and I would sing my songs. Jeff would write songs, and Teresa and I would co-front the band, basically. She'd sing her songs, I'd sing my songs. We'd do harmony on each other's stuff. I would play some keys. We each played guitar. He played bass. And we were just like this makeshift little trio. And it was like, for me, I'd never been in a band before. I'd gone from not playing music to suddenly, like, now playing with my friends and hanging out with them constantly. It was like everything that I was in heaven. I was like, oh, it's happening. It's happening.
It's all happening.
Delusion about like how I probably sounded, if not all of us at the time, right? But like,
if not to feel that way, then why the fuck are you doing it?
And also, you got so if you look across the stage at you, and Teresa Jimenez is there, and she's smiling back at you and singing along and having a good time, and she thinks with her talent that it's worth her time to be on this stage doing this thing with you, then surely things are okay. And so I feel like that was validation, and like we were just starting to like it's things that are normal for a lot of people were just like first times we're having like a regular scheduled band practice.
And I imagine the fact that you hadn't had years and years of like a solo act, allowed you to be open to their ideas a lot more, and like you weren't like ingrained in these like habits that you had formed on your own, good or bad, like there and open to kind of everything.
Definitely, I was so excited to be around people that were interested. That also, like, it's so nice when you have somebody who is a great friend and a great musician and whose work you also like resonates.
Yeah, you have that mutual respect.
Yeah, and it's like I know that you know that it's like you're like, I actually would choose to listen to this music, not just because I know you, not just because I like you, not even because you're technically good at some aspect of it, but because I like this shit. To me is great. And so being able to work with somebody that you can say that about and think that about and not be convincing yourself that feels good. No, I totally know what you mean.
It's been a long path to figure out like what I was like, how to channel some of this energy. Like at one point I started like a small record label, and there were like the artists that I was like, it didn't really go anywhere. We did some recordings, and they're actually being remastered by John Kurzweg right now. But
that's still, you did that. You decided to do something and you did it. That's to me like always.
And I learned a lot. I learned a lot doing it, and I also, but there were those people that I was like had to convince myself that were worth my time, and then there were the people that I was like, no, there's no question.
Yeah.
And if I had trusted my gut a little bit more, I probably wouldn't have wasted
100%.
time on people that like, because the people I recorded with and got the most done with are the people I really wanted to be working
Sure.
with, and then there were other people that ended up just being a distraction.
I feel like it's like it can't be expressed enough. Like that gut check is like super important. You
Yeah.
know, it's like I've still learning how to listen to it, learning what it means, and I get it wrong a lot. But
Well,
like
imposter syndrome is a bitch too.
so those two things, fighting those two things, and figure out what's what, or what's completely ego driving the bus versus what's. There's also been on the flip side too. I have dismissed other artists at various stage in their like journey for whatever stupid reason or none that was worth talking about, and find myself later being like, oh my god, this person has worked so much harder than I've worked, which is not to put in context of me, but like just seeing what they've done and how hard they've worked and how good they've become and how I'm looking up to them for stuff, and they're becoming like somebody who I might have been sleeping on because of whatever like thing I thought, and that person is actually, turns out there are people in my life now that like I did not invest in, and luckily I still caught that relationship while there was still time to, not in a transactional way, just to be like some of my closest friends. I was too up my own ass maybe at a time to think about connecting, because really honestly like what I learned way too late for me is that all this it only matters like about the connections and the community, and it's not about like and determining what success is like, and what I find the most rewarding things are not like it's not about getting a certain amount of likes or a certain amount of people or a certain venue. It's about the feeling of being involved in a community that's got each other's backs and who is stronger together and makes things.
And there's something that really like soul affirming about having people appreciate your art when you are being like your purest self, when you when you pour like your real true self into that art and people appreciate that.
Yeah.
And not in like you said, like a likes or a transactional way, but like in this like really transcendent way. Like I don't know that there's anything better than sharing some of those moments with a crowd, or and sometimes they can be silly, sometimes they can be traumatic, but pouring your like soul into something and having other people like it or respect it or appreciate it is it's so different than trying to make something for other people.
Yes. It's so much
and
more
them
affirming.
liking it. You know? Because of course you do. I think I made this for you to like it. Like,
and also back to expectations too. It also raises it's the same thing we're having. It's like when we talk about people sustaining your shows or whatever. If you raise those expectations, right, and you do decide I'm going to make this for me. I'm going to tell. I'm not going to try to figure out what I think is best for whatever. Those are also like it becomes. I don't know. It's much more rewarding for me. It feels much more authentically me. And the irony is that more people, in my experience, have resonated with the songs that I make for me and the songs that I write for me, whatever that means.
right.
But where I'm not trying to make those people happy are the songs that get the most, that have the most resonance with others, it seems.
Absolutely. And I think that's true for my jokes as well. And it's also the only thing that makes you you. Like, it's the only thing that's going to make your art unique in any real way. I don't worry about, has anybody else made this joke before?
Sure.
Because I'm telling it from such a personal place that even if they might be making the same joke, it's so true for me that I just don't give a shit. Like,
it's your story, right?
Yeah.
Your version, you telling your story or whatever story is going to be like unique, and anything that's unless you're obviously like, there are times when you're like, I'm going to play it at this venue tonight, so I'm going to maybe not sing that song or maybe adjust my word here because my Aunt Susie's in the audience and I love her and this fuck is going to offend her. That's one thing that I could do once in a while. I don't mind.
Sure.
I'm gonna be on the radio. I'm not gonna get kicked off the radio necessarily. But I'm. Oh Lord.
Well, I think it's really important to know how to perform for different audiences.
Sure.
Like that's that's just. There's a clean comedy show every month in Athens that it's just in a coffee shop, and I think it's so cool to just have that be like a thing that they have. Oh, I'm gonna go do 5 minutes of clean comedy, and none of them necessarily are clean comics.
Sure.
It's just a skill
and the parameter, setting that parameter in that box is so helpful sometimes for creating something like it's like a
restraint
game, right?
can be such an such a source of inspiration.
I agree. I'm not a prude in any way, but I'm all for as vulgar or whatever as you want to go. But I totally unrelated. But
I'm never a fan of vulgarity for vulgarity's sake.
100%. I don't need it. But what's amazing to me is when somebody can create something that can't. I don't know if you've seen the movie Train Dreams randomly, but like on Netflix, it is beautiful. It's a very simple story. It's heartbreaking and it's gorgeous. It's a stunning movie, and it is completely, I think, inoffensive. I don't think there's a curse word in there. I don't like the sex scene is like so tasteful, right? And it's a story that I feel like I was so moved by watching. I know my buddy in a punk band loved it. I know I could watch it with my parents, and both my parents would love it without any kind of moment of we got to pause this or I'm gonna walk out of the room or whatever the fuck it is. And so like and it's nice because it's also not like it's not a Hallmark movie. It's not a Christian movie. It's like a Hollywood.
Like Miyazaki, right? I think is another great example of that. You think about like My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh my gosh.
There's not even any conflict in that movie. It is like the most calm, clean piece of art.
So beautiful.
It's a really good companion to LSD.
I've always thought. I mean, I've Spirited Away.
Oh, that's an intense one. I've done it.
I've watched it on mushrooms before.
Yeah. Mushrooms are a little harder to control, though, I think, for me.
It's true. In terms of, like, I don't want to... Sometimes it gives my tummy a whirl.
Well, there's that, too. Yeah. So, you put this album out in 2015 with Teresa and...
Yeah.
And what was his name?
Jeff Doker.
Yeah. Did you think that was...
I thought our band was going to be like, we were just getting to play at this like one venue in Williamsburg, Spike Hill, which is now gone. And it felt like a big real venue. We had a Friday night show, all this kind of stuff, like ticketed. We weren't the opening act. It was like, I was like, we're going to do it. And then Teresa hit the West Coast and which is what she needed to do. And it was the perfect choice and whatever. But at the time I was devastated. I was like, we're just getting to this point where like, I think we could be something. And having Teresa gone felt like it was like, oh God, like I'm not good enough to do this. I can't but Jeff and I still wanted to play music and we had gotten other folks that we would have play in the band with us. We had a lead guitar player, we had whatever. And so we had a full band and I was like, ugh, I want to do something. I don't want to lose this momentum, but I felt so despondent. And so I was like, and Jeff was like, well, you just go and do it without Teresa. We'll do the same thing and like, it's going to be okay. And I was just like, I was struggling because I just didn't think I could. And so like, I didn't want to be like.
Well, and she had always been there at this point.
Always. Yeah. At this point in the band stuff.
Right.
And taken me over, having her there also meant that I had this, like, I knew that if I fucked up, that like, I still have a superstar on stage with me who can like keep it all going.
But she had been there like through you even like really coming out of your shell as a songwriter too. Like she had been like a major component of all of that.
Yeah. And then we were all like, as we still do. I mean, we still have a choir diary chat that I talked to him all the way up here earlier. We're workshopping stuff and like sharing that kind of stuff. But that was the first community. And also, it was also so new. It was very short-lived like period of time. It was just like, and I was just, I thought, oh, this is over before it even started. And so then I was like, you know what? We had talked about wanting to make a record. I had like enough songs between me and Jeff and like doing a cover or whatever that we could like make this record. And so we were like, we tapped a producer and we had no idea what we were doing, especially me, did a Kickstarter, And then, but also I had to decide that I didn't want to be Wiley Gabey. I didn't think it was like right to be this band that we'd all been doing something together, and then suddenly call it the Wiley Gabey Band or whatever. It just felt weird. It felt like it felt manipulative or something. Shortchanged. And I felt if people were going to be involved and invested in this, like it would probably be better if we had like a name that was not me. And I was talking to some friends, and we must, instead of Gold Star Gay, which I think is the actual term is, somebody was like, "Aren't you a Goldenchild?" or something, which is like a Gold Star Gay is someone who is, if maybe you all know what this is in the audience, but so I was like, that's a perfect. I was kind of like, my mom's baby, Goldenchild fits. I'm a Goldenchild gay, and so like that was just like that just worked because also we couldn't find another fucking word, and so that gave me some kind of like mass to create behind it. And
I use a stage name too, and it
helps.
It almost helps you be more honest.
Yeah, 100%.
It's weird.
Same thing as what Bowie or Gaga or anybody like doing that kind of thing, or like anybody who puts on a fake name or changes to a stage name, it makes so much sense because at that point especially it was necessary for me to be able to. It somehow lowers the stakes, which allows you to bring them up, I think.
So, just while we're on the topic, and then I want to jump back a little bit, but what made you want to return to using Wiley Gabey as your name?
Because the reasons that I, aside from wanting people to be, I'll say what was a number of things. The reasons for me not being Wiley Gabey were not compelling enough. It was mostly fear-born, and it was mostly like feelings of inadequacy and feeling uncomfortable with stepping into that and being like, this feels egomaniacal or this feels like narcissistic or whatever the fuck it is. But then, but it was my bandmates, I think, at the time, who were, you should just be Wiley Gabey or whatever.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's also a great name. Yeah. I understand when people use a stage name and they have a name that they're like, no, you're just like, no.
Yeah, my parents gave me Wiley Gabey. It's already, it's got humor and it's got like uniqueness and it's a good. So finally, I got comfortable with that idea, and also logistics wise too. It was weird for me because I was part of this band called Goldenchild, even though that was like primarily me and Jeff songs too, and Jeff did a lot of work on that record. But there was a time when Jeff wasn't. It was just me performing as Goldenchild or me performing with a band, a variation of the band, and it just felt. Also, then it began to feel weird to be like when I moved to Nashville for a brief year and was like, I'm going to play music and playing solo shows. When I'm like, my name is Wiley Gabey. If I play as Goldenchild, that feels weird. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to make that work, and I was very inconsistent with it. And it started to feel like, something just felt disingenuous. Like it started to feel like why wouldn't I just be myself? And I remember talking to somebody, maybe a PR person, and I was like, I'm thinking about releasing my next record as Wiley Gabey and doing this solo thing. And they're like, why would you do that? You started Goldenchild already. You already started this thing. You're going to have to start from scratch on your social media or whatever the fuck it is, all that stuff. And I'm just like, and that's probably some really great advice. I definitely, if I would have stayed performing as Goldenchild and just gone under that name, it would be probably easier in some ways. But like playing solo and call myself Goldenchild felt weird. Trying to make that work also. But now it's been confusing up until now because I haven't had music out under the name Wiley Gabey and only under Goldenchild. Is that touring as much as I have in the last couple of years.
Do you play a lot of those Goldenchild songs now, like live?
Not so much, but I play like one or two of them. I was playing up until maybe the last year. I was playing a good deal, at least like 3 of them, pretty regularly, and that would be my. But the only music I would have online would be, so I'd play some of them, so that would be because I liked playing them still, and I didn't have much else to play, but trying to explain to people like, my name is Wiley Gabey, it's Goldenchild, and then you go to find Goldenchild, there's a ton of people like that. There's a K-pop band that's huge.
Yeah, I came across that.
They started, I was so pissed. Well, that's also another reason, like there was also stuff like that happening. I feel like when I first was doing it, like I'd found like there's a Goldenchild who was a rapper, and like they would get our.
That's a good rap name. I gotta say,
such a good rap name, such a good rap name. And so like our music would get confused on Spotify and Apple Music, especially like back in the day before they had similar technology.
You could have just leaned into it and toured together.
I probably should have. Although I'm sure, but in my head I was like, he is way too cool for me and way better than I am, and like probably doesn't want to hang out with the queer country Goldenchild. But so there was like, and
Let's
then
start
that
sampling your songs.
might be a good idea. I'll be neg on all of this. But yeah, so that was
do a
the
chopped
end.
and screwed record.
I'm gonna put this under some heavy consideration.
So Teresa does the West Coast thing. You're devastated by it. You pick a name. We've talked about how you go back to it, but at what point do you get connected with Dialback Sound, and what am I missing in the middle there? Because I feel like there's a few years there, maybe.
Discovery of myself.
Yeah, okay.
I started making, so I worked with Mark Ephraim, who's a really amazing guy. He's in Sweden now, and he's from the States originally. He was in Brooklyn. He produced our first record, and he and I were looking at making a...
I can tell he's smarter than us because he got the fuck out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, also he has, like, his two kids that basically, so, like, they had dual citizenship, and so it was impossible for them not to be. This is overshared too, but basically it's like they could go after the youngest kid was like 3, and they could still go and move and get retroactive family leave and all this other kind of stuff. They got to basically leave Brooklyn, where they were like, everyone's struggling to like pay rent, like go live, not have to work for 2 years while they got to spend time with their kids, because they got their retroactive parental leave for both kids.
That's
4
amazing.
years later. It's fucking crazy.
America's the best country on earth.
It sure is. America, man. Come on. I'm sure there's something terrible about Sweden, I'm sure. But so...
well, their fish are just
they're
bland.
red and gummy. I'm more of a grouper fan myself.
I'm a Sour Patch Kids guy.
What in between?
So, Mark.
Yeah, so I met Mark. We were working on a second record, starting to get percolating. He moved to Sweden, and those never quite took off. And then I decided to move to Nashville, thinking to myself, I need to do is move to Nashville, where that's where I need to go.
That's where you go to see what is said is so.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I didn't want to leave Brooklyn, but I convinced myself I needed to, and I had a nightmare of a time down there. It just wasn't I love Nashville to visit. I loved visiting there so much. I have wonderful friends there. I just it also wasn't fair to Nashville at the time. I did not want to be there, but I convinced myself to go, so I found fault with everything there.
I see, yeah.
And it is different. It is... The great thing about Nashville in terms of music is that everyone there is amazingly skilled. It's hard. If you're not, then you're not going to get to play. And whether playing at 10 o'clock on Broadway in the morning at like a bar, or the person that's playing like at the Bridgestone Arena or East Nashville, whatever it is shocking. I'm sure you've been around it. Like,
I love Nashville.
So,
to visit.
Yeah, to visit. To visit. Also, the best food and beverage in the world. And I will say that they've got that down pat. I think their food and beverages is frequently more interesting than the music stuff. But but it made me. But back to playing against good people. Nashville was a place where I was like, oh, you got to step your game up. Like if you're gonna do this for real, because this is like different than New York. In New York, we get away with being a little sloppy and stuff like that. And I didn't realize how different scenes like in different cities. Like I started to see more difference. Okay, like.
Well, I think about like Nashville, think about Isbell and the way his shows are so polished, so meticulous. He wants to perform the best version of his song every night. And that is not the way that the Drive-By Truckers play, for instance, right? Like they're much more organic. And I wouldn't say sloppy. They're very tight, but it's much more organic, and it's much more like feeling based.
Vibes, I feel like.
And I think that kind of illustrates the difference between, I don't know New York, but
I think they're so.
But I think it definitely highlights what Nashville is all about. Nashville is about making the most polished, best version of every song, and there is some merit to that. I don't think that that's always the wrong.
You just inspired a song.
Thing.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, please.
I was like. I don't know what it is, but something about machine and the sheen, but there is something like about that polished perfection, and obviously it's there we go. It's like they talk about the Nashville machine, and they talk, and you talk about that, and there's just so much. It is So I guess with New York, I feel like I always, this is probably not fair, and a lot of people in Nashville would probably disagree with me because there's just,
Nobody in Nashville listens to this show. No, I'm just kidding.
that's right. They're polishing something. So I see in New York, I saw a lot of stars. I saw a lot of people who like had this on stage,
Right.
and something dynamic and something, that I didn't. I saw people in Nashville who could out-sing, outplay, like outside of within the choreographed technical things, who could outplay and do anything, who could sing like perfection, but also like, who did not move me. Right. I have been moved watching more shows in New York.
I think if that doesn't sum up Nashville music for me, I don't know what would.
I think that's like the vibe. So, but it taught me how to.
With the exception of Jason's, I think he's done something really unique where he's brought that polish to these really deep songs.
He brought some soul to the polish.
It's really, really unique.
His stuff is fantastic.
It's still not my favorite approach.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I remember, a guy I dated years ago who was really into music, and he was like, I would just play something I loved, and he would be like, ugh, so overproduced, and it's so this, and it's so that. I didn't really know what those things meant. And it was like, and now I get it. It's like, sometimes that sheen and that polish take away the life of the soul of what's in there, and some people like it a little rough around the edges, a little more like real. Also, like, to get that sheen, obviously the precision and amazing technique of the players is one thing, but it doesn't always feel real, right? I mean,
and it doesn't feel real to me at all. I think that's what makes it feel soulless, is it becomes so perfect that only somebody like Jason can like through and make you feel something when it's, because it's, and I think this is true not just about country music.
Oh, sure,
I think it's true about pop music, hip hop. Like, I think when you reach a certain level of production, and this is why I can't get into the AI music thing at all. It's like, regardless of any of the morals behind it, it doesn't have any soul to it.
Yeah.
But I also understand it's so appealing to so many people because they've been fed music that has no fucking soul.
Of course.
For the last 50 years.
On repeat. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
same 40 songs every week.
It's just, it's crazy. And even now, the car that I'm driving doesn't have Bluetooth or anything like that, which is like really cool. So I could listen to the radio back in the day in Tallahassee when I'm here. And so V89.
Hell yeah.
But of course V89. But like sometimes you go through the dial and you're just like, what has this become? Like, it is just, or if I'm feeling like I want to be in a pop, yacht rock, whatever the fuck vibe, maybe I'll just Star 98, whatever it is. All that stuff is just the same. It's still a same number of songs. Like, I can tell you, because I hear the same like ones play, like,
they all use the top 40 format. It's just for whatever genre they're using now.
There's so many other, use AI to find some different fucking songs in there. I mean, there are plenty of them. It's just like,
I used to do this music trivia game like at a bar here in town, and I would have so much fun finding all these little songs that like everybody would remember them when I'd play them, but they hadn't thought of them in fucking years. And that was always really fun to me. So you get out of Nashville.
Yeah, I pieced out of there, and when I feel like I started to also I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to New York. I know what I got to do. I started to made some new connections. I feel like I'm starting to be taken a little more serious. I've met some friends in Nashville. I feel a little more comfortable. And then I'd say that the way I met Matt and the Dial Back crew was like stuff that never happens. When I got a submission form off the website, that it always be exciting to me. I'd be like, you've got a new, basically somebody's been to your website and they filled out the want to talk to you, and you're like, okay, it's gonna happen. It's gonna be like, you're gonna play this show, and it's usually like somebody, some bot or some kind of company overseas to sell you something that some scam, whatever it is. Like, this one was from Matt Patton, and I didn't put anything together at the point. It was just like I got a random message maybe it was Bandcamp, but it was something like Bandcamp or my website, and it was he was booking for The Great Dying, the guy I was talking about who's on Dialback, Will Griffith and Craig Pratt, who was playing in the time, and so coming through and reached out to me saying that they were coming through New York. He had checked out my stuff on Bandcamp and listened to. He particularly mentioned my cover of "There's a Light That Never Goes Out" that I had done for the Smiths, and he thought that we would be a good match for me to play with them, and would I be interested? And I was like, so instantly I was just like, somebody reached out to me, know me, and they listened to my music, and they thought it was good enough to talk to me, and like they want me to put up, and I was just like, absolutely yes, and I was like, I can't wait. Then I was like, I think I was maybe done some snooping. Like after that, I was like, who are these people? And then he's like, digging around, and I'm like, holy shit, Matt is like the bass player for the Drive-By Truckers.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously, like Matt's not gonna lead with that and be like, there was
but
no,
also like a lot of other people
would
too.
have,
He's everybody. He's America's bass player.
He is. I love watching him on stage too, because it is just like brings me so much joy to watch him and like that.
He's the happiest I've ever seen anybody.
Yeah, he's the happiest ever. I mean, he just gives off such a. I love watching it. It's such a. Sometimes I don't get to see that side of him so much in conversation and like other kind of work.
Yeah, I asked him and Taylor was just like, that's his happy place. Like,
that's his happy place.
Like that, he's not like that all the time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, everybody's got. It's lovely to see. It's lovely to see it because you can't also.
Well, he's the sweetest guy in the world, but
100%.
he just. I never see anybody so happy than when I see Matt Patton on stage.
I mean, honestly, it kind of reminds me of Jeff Stoker, who's also like, maybe sometimes the same often on stage, but he would play that bass when we were in the band. And my mom would always say, he just looks so happy. But Matt says that same thing. I love watching him. Sometimes I'm like, I don't pay attention to the other guys because I'm just like, obviously I know him, but like just seeing that side of him that it's so obviously authentic.
And sometimes their songs are pretty dark. Sometimes you need to see somebody smiling.
Yeah, right. No shit. But
one thing that struck me was this, like, how you start to get into Americana music and like the alternative country side of things. Because one thing I didn't hear you talking about up until now is it's not like you grew up listening to like Wilco.
No.
You get what I mean? Like, or
those influences came in right at the end of high school.
But it's like you would have eaten that shit up had you been exposed to it.
Oh yeah. And when I was in Chicago, like I had friends like they were just like, oh, you need to be listening to this. And it was like stuff that I like, Nico Case is after Dolly Parton, Nico Case is my number 2. She's my number 1.25. Like
the New Pornographers are one of my fucking period.
I say that now that Morrissey is everything, that like I could say that they're safe, if one in the top 3 of my favorite bands. I love them. When I heard them the first time, I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, I never heard anything like something.
It's another one of those groups where you have 3 greatest songwriters.
So good.
Like AC Newman is.
Oh my god. When my producer and I, when we started to go to record the second record, so AC Newman was on tour with the New Pornographers in Europe, and my buddy and his wife wanted to come. We're going to like coming to the States for the summer, and so they did a housing swap kind of situation. They're friends with those fuckers or whatever, and so like basically the Newman and Christina, they all went to stay at Mark's house when they were coming through on Sweden. So got 3 days at their house. They had a little studio in a little work shed. I got to stay in the guest house, which is apparently where Nico Case sleeps. I feel like I'm really name dropping or whatever.
No,
but it was like
it helps the SEO. It's fine.
It was like definitely like it was so cool. I mean, for me, like to be like Mark was being so cool and be like, hey, we're gonna go to Carl's house. What do you think? And I'm just like, these are people that I like, my heroes.
Yeah.
Right? And so like the idea that I'm like in this guy's house in his studio, like working on it. I'm sad that we did that was the seeds for what eventually is becoming this record, which has been a long time. Like it was surreal. So the New Pornographers were huge, but for me and Nico Case and Wilco like was not as strong as an influence, but definitely like
But this is all you got into this stuff like kind of later
in life, later in life stuff. and all like, and so I'm cramming while I'm playing music, kind of like
You
catching
are
up.
what you listen to.
Yes, 100%. Thank you, Alicia Walker. So I started listening to nothing but Nico Case because I can't not. It's like, I mean, I could listen to those records over and over and over and over and over again. I am obsessed with
With
them.
and without her boyfriends.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
and without. I
Yeah.
actually, I from New Orleans last week here, and I was just like, I was tired and I wanted to listen to something, but I wanted to stay awake. And I was like, you know what? I haven't done it. I just Nico Case. I just started with the Virginian and went and listened to every record all the way. I didn't finish Hell On, but I got to Crawfordville. I think I definitely must have listened to something in between but it was like it was great going through the whole thing.
I was working at Vinyl Fever when like Twin Cinema and
The golden age.
yeah, like those Destroyer records were coming out, and yeah, no, I got to see Dan Behar play a solo show. I think it was as Destroyer, but it was just him at Club Down Under.
Oh wow!
Of all places.
Oh, that gave me chills too.
And I've seen Nico at the Moon, and I've seen AC. Like I've seen the New Pornographers with as AC Newman, but he didn't have Nico. He had Dan Behar, but he didn't have Nico. So it's I've never seen the full New Pornographers lineup.
It's good.
Yeah, it's a bucket list for me for sure. How does playing a show or some shows translate into, okay, I'm putting out my next single on that?
Yeah, so basically, we had the show with The Great Dying. It was one of the great. We just instantly became very, very close, like best friends. They had friends in New York that all became very good, close. Our friends Nick and Nikki. It just became like I felt like I was suddenly welcomed into this crew. Then came back through. We played again, and dialed back, and we had this house show, and I might have had a mushroom or two, and I was like watching them. They were here we had a show. Next night there was a house show, and I did not play. I just went to go see them in our friend's house, and I was watching them, and it was like having this moment. The trees were outside in the fall, and like leaves are coming down, and the guys are playing, and it's beautiful. I start crying, and I'm just thinking to myself, I need to work with these guys. I need to make music with these guys. I'm going to work with these guys. And then Will gets off stage, and he's, I just had an idea. You need to make a record at Dialback. I was like, I was just thinking that. So, and then we started talking about doing that, and it was, there's also like Dialback was a slightly different setup at that time. There was, I won't go into, this is somebody else's story to tell, not mine, but things have changed a little bit. The team at Dialback's changed a little bit, and so that led to some for many reasons, took a little longer to get to that point.
I got you. Yeah,
and so I
restructuring.
Yeah, some reconfiguring of things, and so a lot of stuff was going on. COVID happened, so just when things were starting to get really where I thought to myself,
So you linked up with these and had the idea to put this out before COVID hit.
It's around that, right? I guess right after, right around COVID. It was sometime
2021 or
20.
whatever.
Yes, and I think when they first reached out, I want to say it was 2019, and I had just gotten back, and so we played our show, and it was 2020, and then the world crashed, and New York was it was basically we played a show on February 20th, and by March 12th, New York was already shut down.
I was in Atlanta the last day the aquarium was open. It was I was in the aquarium the last night they were open.
Crazy. It's 2026 now, and that was 2020. That seems crazy.
It is.
So yeah, that kind
time
of
is weird.
Yeah, it really is. Oh fuck. But so maybe it's 2 years after or a year and a half after that we're talking seriously about making a record. I go down to Mississippi and check things out. And then one of my best friends got diagnosed with cancer and went from being this 42-year-old woman 6 months later, gone. Really aggressive, really awful. Thank you. Also, Emily Wiltshire, there's a for her on the record, and I feel like she's been a catalyst for me to light a fire under my ass, her spirit and her energy, because she was always a very big supporter. And right around that time was when I need to get off my ass and do this. What would Emily say right now? She would tell you that, girl, what are you fucking waiting for? Get out there and do your thing. And right around that time, my buddy asked me to go on tour. I'd never even been on tour. And so like I did that. I was like, I'm going to do these things, start getting more serious about this stuff. I'm going to go to Americana Fest. I'm going to do like this and the third. I'm going to make this record with Dialback. Record with Dialback just took a while to get to for a number of reasons.
Well, it sounds like you were writing a lot during this time,
Yeah,
too.
I was
So, like, the
starting to-
record, like, even though it maybe didn't come out or get recorded when you initially planned,
It's
like,
good that
it
it did.
turned out to be maybe a totally different record now.
Because what happened honestly is like I was in Nashville and I was like I don't know what I want. I don't have for this record, but I'm feeling the anxiety and the push to make something, and like everything from this record has kind of come from the outside in a little bit. And it was like in my head I could see a record cover that I wanted, and I knew that I wanted it. It's gonna sound so stupid probably right now, but hopefully it'll make sense when the LP comes out. Like, fantasy country was coming to mind.
I love that.
It's inspired by Lord of the Rings or whatever, graphic novel I loved as a kid, or some kind of world that looks like ours, right? But that like maybe has like a little bit of magic in it. Maybe there's maybe there's a vampire, maybe there's a unicorn, maybe everything else looks the same. I don't know, like this surreal like queer country fantasia world that is the embodiment of like that I will create the world for myself that I did not have. Like that I will have this like this hero's journey kind of moment. It's like me in a swamp, and instead of me on the four-wheeler as a kid playing by myself, imagining that I'm Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia, depending on the fucking day, like that, like this is I'll create this world of like fantasy country, whatever that fucking means, and it'll be like not just like about like queer stories or not, or women's stories or whatever stories. That's just different from that. It'll be where nothing is out of place here. Everything is welcome here. And that reflects in the sounds. I want stuff that like I want Brian May on a Dolly Parton song. I want these different things to come together, and I don't care if it tells me, especially if it's like a music snobby person who's gonna be like, well, that feels very like cliche, or that feels very this, or that feels very opulent. I'm like, bitch, that's what I want. Opulent. I want to like have I want to have the whatever. I want to have that. I want to have that world come to life, but I had no content for that, nor did I know what that was to be.
Well, and it sounds like, regardless of it's all very intentional.
Yeah, like I wanted it to be, and I definitely felt like it was happening to me, and I was trying to follow breadcrumbs to get to where it was, but like never really felt. I mean, for a long time I was like, what the fuck are these songs? Like, how does this mean anything? And how do I like this is like a great idea. Like in terms of like, I mean, I liked the idea. I liked the idea of some weird fantasy country vibe. Like, what does that mean? And like, and then I'd write a song that I liked, and I'd be like, this is definitely going to be a song on the record. But how is this? What does this mean? How does this have anything to do with what you're talking about? And I'm just like, I'm just gonna stop listening to that side of myself and just put my foot in front of the other and continue doing what I'm doing, because this is just ideas. There's nothing set in stone, and kind of following those breadcrumbs. And so it starts to make sense to me now, like in ways. It's really fascinating for me because being aware that I had nothing to show for my idea other than like some images and some ideas that didn't really seem to go together.
Yeah.
And trusting that process and just like writing and letting things flow, and then like kind of see like, oh, there are patterns here, and maybe the answers aren't clear like at first, but they become clear, and you're like, oh, like what you're doing is creating this. I remember talking to Matt, or his former partner before him, or before now, and trying to explain what the record was about, and trying to explain this silly idea. And I think it's just a record about learning how to love yourself, and like, and all this like, and there's something that the hero's journey about it, and all this, sounds, these are not new. It's not new territory. Anything groundbreaking about it.
No, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is as long as it's authentic to you.
Yeah.
But when you're so deep in it, it's hard to see how it can all come together, especially when it is coming like from a really personal place. Yeah. But then when you put it out there and it's perceived by others, the fact that it's all so tied to this one person and comes from this honest place, I think gives it that unification that you can't see when you're in it and making it.
100%. When you're in the weeds like that, you gotta get that balcony or have somebody else get away from it.
playing this Friday at the Flickr. This Friday, as in,
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually, we're recording this the week before, but this Friday at
Yes.
Flickr as part
I
of the
cannot
Dial
wait.
Back showcase that happens now every year at Heathen's Homecoming. Is this going to be your first time going to the Drive By Truckers homecoming shows?
Yeah, this is my first. I've been to several of their shows, but not to the Heathen's Homecoming.
I will tell you, this will be like my 17th.
Oh, yes. Play more.
I don't know what I can tell you except that it's not like any of their other shows.
Yeah.
There is something about that room, about the people that come, mostly about the people that come.
Sure.
Really. Like, what's amazing to me about this group of people is, like, some of us don't even talk throughout the year very much.
Sure.
But it's like we pick back up and we've known each other 10, 15 years now. And some of us have only known each other 4 or 5 years. Some of us will meet each other for the first time next week because it is kind of always rotating a little bit. People are getting older. When I started going, I was like the youngest one there. I started going on my early 20s, and everybody else was like in their 30s, 40s. And I was the baby. Yeah, I was the baby, 100%. Sure. And now it's like, oh my, it's a much more, there's a lot more people my age, but they weren't there then. So it's this weird.
You gotta have that. Well, it's cool to be in that when, to see that.
Well, a lot of it's the people start bringing their kids.
Right? Always.
And I'm like in this weird in between spot age wise. I feel like a lot of the people that have been coming for years and years are like 5 or 10 years, at least more like 10 years older than me. And then a lot of the other people are like 5, 10 years younger than me. And it's
in a sweet spot.
This weird little but what's amazing to me, it almost reminds me of, how our cells completely regenerate every 7 years, but we're still us. That's kind of what it feels like.
Analogy. That's so cool.
That's kind of what it feels like. It's like, even, there's a lot of people that were foundational to us being as organized as we are and raising the amount of money that we do. Like, shout out to Hank Matthews, who was, he's no longer with us, but he was one of the like backbones of the community. And then when he passed away, other people really stepped up and to see it recycle and maintain its identity all at the same time is really, it's a beautiful thing.
That's beautiful. Like the way you put that too. That's really special.
I feel really lucky to be a part of it. We have a mutual friend named Craig who that I grew up with. He was like one of those people like turning me on. Like he gave me my first fucking Slobberbone record 20 something years ago. And I finally got to see Slobberbone at Shoals Fest like 4 years ago. But we're watching, I think it was the Black Eyes Verite concert that they filmed, and it's on like Amazon Prime. You can watch it. But it's over, and he looks at me, and he's crying, and he's like, "I've been looking for what you found my entire life." He's like, "I'm fucking jealous." Like he's like, "I'm like, God damn it."
That's beautiful.
So I'm really excited to like have you there. Have you? I'm also excited to have some of my part of the South like represented up there. Like the truckers have not played very many shows in Tallahassee. They don't get a lot of love here.
Yeah.
They've played here and not a lot of people came. They played here. I used to see Jason play solo to 20 people.
I've talked to it's not always the stop don't always make the most sense for people at a certain.
But on the other hand, Chuck Reese curates it from Southerner and now Salvation South, curates a stage at Word of South every year. And one year it included Hood, Patterson Hood, the whole Spooner Oldham, like all of the old Muscle Shoals guys coming in and playing a bunch of Eddie Hinton songs.
Wow.
And it's like one of those things that goes down in history in this community, and it happened here. So that's the kind of like I don't understand why it happened here. It was a pretty packed room. It got moved indoors because of the weather, but it's really cool to me to see this part of our little enclave of Big Bend, the Florida Panhandle, the Forgotten Coast, whatever the fuck you want to call it, be brought like into all this.
Yeah, it feels very exciting. That's just listening to you talk about it, just put it to me in a way that, like, when you're doing it and trying to do it, and I definitely have hometown pride and stuff like that, but to have just I don't know how to articulate this, but that's like touching and gives me like juice, because I don't think about it in terms of like, I want more representation for me and my friends and the people that I think do great from this area, and like having that, but like also the people here are proud of that and having that being included in that world. When Matt reached out to me to ask me about the show, it's so funny because he texted me and he was just like, I was going to ask you about this. I know it's like a long trip because I was in Brooklyn. I assumed he thought I was going to be there during the time. And like, fuck yes, I want to do this. Of course, not even he didn't, I didn't understand at the time that it was part of Ethan's Homecoming. He just said, I've got the showcase, whatever. But like the casual and generosity of him and bringing me to, like, I have never had anybody like other than like and friends and stuff like that. Nobody like Matt share any interest in what I'm doing. So like to have somebody, maybe the only person who's cold outreach to me like that, have it be somebody who is working on in such a great band and multiple great bands, and who has this mission to help people out. The fact that he's willing to invest any of his time and resources in me and been so welcoming, and the fact that I get to play this, like I get to release my first record under my own name, fulfilling like a dream. I'm super excited about it, but I get to also have my release day show as a pre-party for like the fucking drive-by truckers, right? It's like it's like one of those things that I intellectually understand. Like I don't have my body is still like catching up to it.
Yeah.
Right? It's been like I pinch myself a lot, just that somebody is championing anything that we're doing. So it's amazing.
I'll say that he's also pretty fucking smart because he's putting you in front of a perfect audience.
Sure. I mean, I'm cannot wait.
I Don't Give a Fuck is streaming on Friday.
Yeah. Streaming everywhere.
It's, if you're listening to this, it's either about to come out or it just came out or it's been out for years. Who knows? But when full album, do you stay for that?
We don't have a firm release date.
Okay.
We have a targeted like area. I think late summer, early fall is what we're looking for, to have everything out and have it hopefully on vinyl. And we did 10 songs. We tracked 10 songs. I think 9 of them are going to make it onto the record. And right now we're just in the middle. We're trying to finish up overdubs. It's taken. They're used to it, Dialback, doing things like going in with a band and capturing everything live and getting that mix on their big, beautiful analog board. And we went in with pretty stripped down. Like it was like me and Matt on bass and Bradley Gordon on drums. He's a local, he's a sweetheart. Acoustic guitar and singing, and we captured, we just went through and knocked him out in a few days in Water Valley, and with Starlin Browning, who's an awesome engineer and co-producer. And then we've been doing Overdub World to bring the rest of it to life, which is, at first I thought was going to be real fun. And it has been really great. But I don't communicate with people very well when it comes to my ideas. I talk about my music ideas and like colors or cinema or like, feelings, and still learning like the right vocabulary. So like doing that remotely, yeah. And also working with new people. It's like Matt's introduced me to so many great people, and luckily we've all they learned to work around my quirks and my craziness, and like you find people who you can like talk to and describe something musically in terms of something, and they're like, oh, you mean like this? And I'm like, yes, Ryan Jewell. There's just so many great people on this song, on the whole record. But like Jay is on there from the key for the song, plays Farfisa organ. Obviously, Matt is the co-producer and bass player, and Marissa Paternoster, who is an amazing guitarist in New Jersey, who's previously part of the Screaming Females, and her. So that was like a delight. Like, I got connected to her through my friend Paisley Fields, and then Matt brought in the other folks. Like I said, Ryan Jewell from Ohio is just amazing. He played drums for Riley Walker, I think, for the Drive By Truckers. Matt was like, "Man, I saw this guy. I know just the guy for this. I think like play with Riley Walker, and man, he's good." And so like,
it's not a bad impression.
on it, I'm working on it. But people who have just taken such good care. Kel Kellum is amazing pedal steel. He'll be all over the record. He's a Mississippi guy. Hope I'm not missing anybody on that, but like, just it's exciting to have like these songs that you've never heard fleshed out, because I've been playing everything solo. To have these strangers come and find your people and bring it all to life. It's real.
Well, and that was my next question. Is do you have any plans to like put together a live band, or do you want to just play solo?
I would love to play with the band every night of the week. Logistics are the only reason that I'm logistics and budget, kind of thing. I'm so excited. I get to play with Kev, who's pedal steel. I'm going to play in Mississippi the week after next. I'm going to play in Thacker Mountain Radio, which is in Water Valley this time, and Proud Larry's in Oxford. And so
I know Proud Larry. My buddy Cody plays there a lot with Cody Shade Harrell.
I know that name. Yeah,
he's Big Burnside's bass player. But I grew up with him. He's been on the show too. Played a show here. Anyway, we could talk all day, and we're gonna. I think we might have gotten the folks to Athens though. What you're gonna tour? It sounds like you're gonna be on tour.
I'm releasing this record. I'm gonna be on tour as much as I can be on the road. I got shows, a lot of shows up. I'll be in Tallahassee.
Yeah, the Bark on February 25th.
Yeah, and then like I'll be in fingers crossed Pride Fest. I'm doing South by Southwest. I'm going to California in April. I'm doing a couple of Florida tours with awesome band named Cooper in Gainesville and Short. And trying to keep myself, trying to just get out there, and now that I can tell people that they can find my music by my actual fucking name.
Well, it's been really awesome talking to you, Wiley.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
Just a big thanks to Mom and my dad and my family, and also to Matt and all the Dialback crew, everybody who worked on this record, and all my friends and family for putting up with me. And I hope y'all like the music.
We'll see y'all at Flickr on Friday. We'll see you come down. If you're in Tallahassee, come out to the Bark on February 25th. There's links to all kinds of stuff in the description of this episode. So it's been awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
That was my interview with Wiley Gabey. It was a long one. I hope you enjoyed it, but we got into all kinds of stuff. I didn't really want to cut anything out. If you're in Athens on Tuesday, the 17th, I'll be at Flickr Bar doing a short set. Come say hey. Otherwise, we'll see you at the rock show, y'all. Be safe out there. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please check out the Patreon link in the description of this episode and on the description of our page. It's just a way for us to try and make this podcast sustainable. I do everything from the booking, producing, editing, and releasing and marketing of this podcast. I'm really trying to make this something that I can keep going for the long haul. Thanks for listening. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next week.